Bill Wingrove has been waiting. Yeah, Facebook changed some things around again on us. Bloody hell. And, you know, you go pushing the buttons on the Facebook page to hit you live, and they changed where the buttons are. And regardless, that's our problem, not yours. Welcome, Michael Calcione, Luca Craig, and a bunch of others. David James. Yeah, it'll be interesting. We've got Magnus with us, Magnus Wheatley. Christopher Gillingham in Leamington again, saying hi. Bill Wingrove down in Tampa, Florida. Stingray up in Seattle. Don Lunabos, Ted Ryman in Cape Town, South Africa. Ed Worley, Blake Middleton in Minnesota. Let's get this one on the road.
3, 2, 1.
Yeah, Pedro Foiling Sailor, did you see his comment already? He says, oh goody. This is Peter Stevenson down in Sydney. He's saying, oh goody, another day of restoring my old scow moth while we're still in lockdown. Michael Colcliffe is on from Port Stevens in Australia. Bill Canfield, I don't know if Bill's in Newport, Rhode Island, or down in the beautiful U.S. Virgin Islands. Maura Stevens up in Canada. Many, many others. Paul Homchick, sunny San Francisco, hottest day of this mild year. Andrew Pindar is on. Aha, so you are there, Gordon Smith. And I thought the two of you had succumbed to a surfeit of rum. Huh? What an idea that would be. Peter Ham is a new name. Welcome, Peter. Good evening from Denmark. Gordon Smith is saying David Rowe, Bill Shore, Ed Worley. Lots of people on here already. Julia, Carlos Avis down in South America.
Right.
Johnny Hines, and many more. Welcome to the show number 455 for Tuesday, the 21st of September, 21/9/21, Julia, and it is the warmest day of the year.
It is.
Why is that?
Because it's almost fall, so San Francisco's summer weather can begin.
My co-host, Commodore of the Beach Street Yacht Club, we are ready to rock and roll here. We have standing by patiently from the Isle of Wight, Magnus. Magnus Wheatley will be joining us in a sec for this segment that many of you have been asking for and requesting for quite some time, because this is the vexing, as I called it in the tease, Julia, the vexing venue vacillations, and maybe Magnus can come up with another V word.
Yeah, he's the master wordsmith.
He is. He wrote another one. I wake up in the morning at dark 30, and as do you, and we've gotten a new post from Magnus, and it always kind of shocks us awake, doesn't it?
Yeah, I read it.
We're live from Studio B here in the beautiful Marina District of San Francisco, where we've now had 2 days in a row of summer weather. On this, the last day of summer. It's the last day of your winter down under. So let's get on with it, because it is a big show. Julia, you like to say...
Yes, you are hereby instructed to like, follow, and share.
Yeah, we've had a lot more since you've been instructing people.
Yes.
You've gotten very tough. I like that a lot. Comments welcome too, even in replay. Those of you, we got 1,000 people watching it live, and then several thousand who watch it in replay. We appreciate also those who give us support via Patreon.com. Patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated. It keeps us alive, the lights on, and the internet on. We're actually going to improve our internet, I think, Julia. Going up to 1.2 gigabits down.
Oh, wow.
For the same price, or so they say. They probably lock us in for another longer time.
I just got we'll talk about it later.
You got a bill?
No, I
got an offer.
Yes.
Okay, we'll talk about it. Let's get on with the starting line. This courtesy of Monica Diaz. This is frightening.
It is.
This is really a frightening development. You knew it was coming because of the swarm of little earthquakes and activity there in La Palma in the Canary Islands. And there have been, I don't know, Julie, if you've seen some of the other videos from there this morning. This came from Monica. And I hope she's not there. I hope she's in Spain and the mainland. But that is a frightening concept. I'm going to play back that up and play it again just so you can see.
Yeah.
They knew it was coming, the swarm of the mini earthquakes. They've been predicting this for days, if not weeks.
Yeah.
Great sailing part of the world. They're out in the Canaries, and that is, of course, La Palma. We hope all of you and all your friends and family are safe and have long gotten your butts out of that corner.
The last numbers I saw is that 100 homes had burned and 5,000 people had been evacuated.
Well, that's not too horrible, all things considered, I guess. But this is our main topic again, and that's why we have Magnus Wheatley joining us, because this vexed venue vacillations, they continue. As I put this up a week ago yesterday on my Facebook page and photoshopped in that postponement signal when we heard it was coming, and sure enough, it was. Magnus Wheatley joins us now live from the Isle of Wight, his new home. Magnus, you've just moved down there from London. Welcome.
Thank you.
How long have you been on the Isle of Wight, and are you technically in Cowes, or are you down south of Cowes a bit?
I'm in East Cowes, so I'm just on the other side of the river from the main strip, as it were. And we've been here now about 5 months or so.
Do you still have that chain, what do you call it, chain barge that goes across the river there?
Yeah, there's a bit of a story there. So the engine's broken down on it, and it's out of action. So I think it's going to be out of action till the end of the year, which is a little bit tricky to get over to my boat. But you just have to go around the long way.
So how do you do it then? How do you get across? You have to drive around the end of the...
Yeah, drive around, and it's a real pain in the backside.
Well, what's the town down south? Was it Newport is the next?
Newport, yeah.
Because as I've told you, we used to go to a Admiral's Cup and other action there on the Isle of Wight to get away from Cowes and the whole sailing madness. We'd go down. Is there still this famously good Chinese restaurant in Newport? I've stumped him.
You're putting me on the spot there. There's a very good Chinese in East Cowes, I can tell you that much.
Okay, well, then we don't have to go that far. So, Magnus, welcome. Julia has been waiting with bated breath for you to come back on. Before we do it, I've got another Brit who we had here to the Beach Street Yacht Club, whom we had here for dinner last night. I was going to try to record a segment with him last night. You may know Matt Whitfield. Everyone knows of you because you're the famous, really successor now to Bob Fisher, arguably, as in the world nautical scribe, certainly British nautical scribes. And we had Matty Whitfield here last night with us for dinner. His face looks a little red in that photo. I don't think that's my color correction or my program, because he looked good last night. And I caught up with him by phone this morning. I thought you'd enjoy this. You all would enjoy this. And then we'll get back to Magnus. Matt, I trust you're well after coming over for dinner last night.
Yeah, no, I'm feeling great.
I think he sounds a little rough.
I had a lot of fun last night with you, Julia, and Alfredo. It was really nice to catch up and talk about everything.
So you were here in San Francisco for the Rolex Big Boat Series, sailing on a J88. You did very well.
Yes, I was on the J88 Courageous, which is based out of Sausalito Yacht Club, owned by Gary Pinariello, and we were. We did really well. It was not only was it the Big Boat Series for us, it was our North American Championship, which we managed to win both of them throughout the 4 days of the regatta, which was absolutely awesome and really, really good fun.
And you were trimming, and from what you told us last night, and I got to know you from Governor's Cup and the Youth World Match Racing Championship. You're a former youth match racing champion in the UK, and also maybe the national match racing champion. Is that right?
So we've never actually won the national match race. We've come second quite a few times, but never always had to miss you in the finals for different reasons. But yeah, so normally, we know each other through the Gov Cup and the Youth World when they were at Balboa Yacht Club, and it was. It's an amazing part of the sport. Can't say enough about Balboa Yacht Club and their emphasis on youth match racing, really, really bringing through young sailors and giving opportunities that people don't otherwise get.
Well, we're delighted that you're going to be here in the States. Tell us what you're doing up in Seattle, and then we'll let you get on with your morning because you got to catch a plane.
So this afternoon I'm flying from San Francisco up to Seattle to study my master's degree, which starts at the University of Washington at the start of next week. So it was awesome to come out for a week of sailing in San Francisco. And before I get studying, which is the masters I'm doing is real estate investment and economics.
Terrific. Well, good luck with that. We'll put you in touch, as I said last night. We'll put you in touch with our good friends Sean and Chris Odorowski, past Commodore and past Admiral, up at the Seattle Yacht Club. It's one of the best yacht clubs in the country, if not in the world. And you'll have a ball up there at what we call UW, the University of Washington. And I hope to see you down here in SoCal, well, Northern California, as well as down in SoCal over the course of the next year while you are matriculating at the University of Washington.
Yeah, I can't wait. I've heard so many great things about the city, the yacht club, and the sailing in Seattle. I'm really excited to get involved and get doing as much as possible and get sailing on some boats, and also just for my parents. And I'm really keen to get studying as well.
Good. Well, best wishes. Stay in touch, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, nice speaking to you, Tom. All the best. All the best to you as well.
Thanks, Matt. Ciao. Bye. Okay, so that was Matt Whitfield, a Brit who's a match racing champion. He's been at Gov Cup. He's been to the match racing Youth Worlds Match Racing Championship. We got to know him over the last years, and he was here in town. We had him over to the Beach Street Yacht Club, Julia, for dinner last night. Yes. He sounded better at the end of that 3-minute phone call than he did. I think he was a little dusty this morning.
Well, that's possible.
Did we carry on last night?
I didn't.
I didn't either. Well, you went upstairs, and then he got an Uber and went back to wherever he was staying. So we're delighted to have Matt here. He's one of our 150 Beach Street Yacht Club members from around the world, and a terrific guy. Now let's get into the American Cup boat races. Julia hates it when I call it that.
I do.
And we got, of course, Magnus standing by in Cowes in the Isle of Wight, and he's been writing extensively about all this. Magnus, what is going on? What is the latest with all this cup back and forth? He said, she said, between the various people involved in what I'm calling the venue decision. Well, we know the venue decision is postponed, but the vacillating venue vexations. What the hell is going on?
Well, it's silly season, and what day is it? Is it Cork? Is it? I spoke to someone this afternoon, and they said, "Magnus, what's really going on?" And I said, "Look, it's Tuesday. Today, what we know is that the Auckland Kiwi Home Defence program is being skewered by Team New Zealand. Team New Zealand are in Cork in Ireland evaluating that bid. Jeddah's gone completely quiet, and Spain, I don't know, but where's it going to be? Well, I can guarantee I know exactly where it's going to be. It's going to be in one of those 4 venues. It's not, and it's nuts. And the traffic today on the website, I mean, it's clearly this Kiwi Home Defence thing has it's either going to come off and be fantastic, and it's going to be in Auckland, or it's going to be an absolute national disgrace, and people are going to be really, really angry about it. And I don't know which way it's going. And some of the questions that came out of Team New Zealand today are alluding to a phone call and a conversation. They've been tipped off. And if there are people behind the scenes pulling the strings, and we have no confirmation that that is true, we're taking Team New Zealand's word for it. If that is true, I don't think the Kiwi public are going to thank them for it. And I think 2002, 2003, the scars are still quite raw with the Kiwi public, who have put on a fantastic show in Auckland. They put on a brilliant show, and my view is they deserve to have it back. That's my personal view. And somehow they need to find the money to do it, and the defense. But Grant is very clear. The money can't be found onshore, and I have to believe him. I mean, I think I wrote in my blog that, he's got his tentacles into just about every body with money in Auckland, and or in New Zealand. And if he says it can't be raised, I kind of have to believe him.
No, let's go back, because a lot of people on here, but probably some new people as well. By the way, before we get into the venues, I just want one comment because I'll lose it. And I want to say hi to Julie Ahrens, who's joined us, Paul Homchick, Chad Turner. Ben Nichols is saying Matt, meaning the guy we just interviewed by phone and was here for dinner last night. He stayed here for a week, didn't he, with us?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't Matty stay here for a week with us?
One of the last.
Let me insert this comment. Sorry, Magnus. Ben Nichols is saying Matt is a very accomplished sailor, very grounded, very talented, and results will keep coming. And I just insert that because he's, Julia especially is in love with Brits, and she's in love with you and with Andrew Pindar and Andrew McIrvin. John Emmett and
everyone's in love with Andrew McIrvin.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, let's get back to the Cup now because the venues. Just to recap, for those of you who may not be completely up to speed, Mark Wharton Reed is saying Grant Dalton needs to step away from ACE. Well, we'll talk about that too, Mark Reed. Good to see you, Mark, this weekend. The first venue that we've all been talking about, and they have withdrawn, at least Valencia. There's still supposedly a Spanish venue, a bigger picture Spanish venue at large, so to speak. And Magnus was mentioning Valencia, Spain. They said, quote, we could not align our mutual interests when they resigned before the earlier in the week when the deadline came on the 17th, last Friday, and of course that got postponed, that venue decision. So Spain, VLC we call it because of the airport code. Then there's Cork, and Magnus is pretty well dialed in up there. We're going to ask him what the latest in a minute about Cork. And the government and the locals there said both. More cost-benefit analysis is needed as they've been poring over the figures from not only Auckland last time, but previous America's Cup hosts. Airport code ORK. Hey, I don't know why I keep putting those in there, Julie, but I use that shorthand a lot. So I guess KSA, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Jeddah, where they're doing a Formula One race in December, their first ever hosting, and they like to host big events there in Jeddah. So those are the venues, rather, besides lovely Auckland. This a nice, beautiful photo. You know who took that photo?
No.
Carlo Belenghi.
Yeah, Carlo Belenghi, and he took it on the. So I think I said I used this photo on the show last Friday. That was. I don't know if it was on the eve of the Cup. I think it was right after Luna Rossa Bertarelli won the Challenger Selection Series, and they lit, gracious hosts that they are in New Zealand, they lit the Sky Tower up in the colors of the national colors of Italia and Luna Rossa Bertarelli. So that's Auckland. And now take us through these personalities. The first one is Grant Dalton. Tell us what you think and what you know. And then we'll go to Dunphy, and then we'll go to the others that you and I both here are either in front or behind the scenes with the machinations.
So my view on Grant Dalton is that he is a living legend. He should be much more feted than he is in New Zealand. He seems to divide opinion, and if he was a Brit, he would be Sir Grant Dalton now, and there would be a statue in Trafalgar Square of him. He's a winning machine, and I keep describing him as that. He's the ultimate winning machine. But the thing with Grant is it's this flat structure, and it's really important that that there's a really key point here that there's no one bigger, there's no big names, big egos in the team. Okay, there are, but there's some question marks now on who's in that team. But Grant is leading it. He's on the front foot. He's in the front foot in the media. He is not going to, he's publicly said he doesn't want 2003 to repeat again, and he's going to do absolutely everything he can to make sure that doesn't happen.
Okay, let me stop you on that point for a sec, because the reason they lost in 2003 was not because of lack of money. And he keeps asserting that. We can't have a repeat of 2003. And it was because they lost the talent. Russell Coots, Brad Butterworth, and the so-called Tight Five were hired away by Alinghi when there was not a very strong nationality rule. They were hired away. They were offered big salaries. And you've got some news on that, I think, or at least you have had in your columns your posts on the Rule 69 blog in the last couple of days. But they didn't lose because of lack of money in 2003. They lost, and the boat was okay. The R&D, the hula maybe wasn't as good as they'd hoped. But that's not why they lost in 03.
Well, I mean, race one, they were around that top mark. They were, quarter of a leg ahead down the first run. And PJ Montgomery was saying, well, they've got a rocket ship. The rig was too light. The hula was a bit of a joke. But yeah, they didn't lose through lack of money, but they lost because of the talent. And I think also they weren't the winning machine that they became. So I think a lot of lessons were learned there. Grant doesn't want to do that again. He doesn't want to go down that road again, and he's fighting tooth and nail. But he, for some reason, he doesn't capture the media. He doesn't capture, and I think he's probably upset some people, and he's probably, he calls a spade, and he is straight down the line. I deal with him quite a lot, and he's straight up. He's pretty honest, and sometimes you're being played. Sometimes you take what he says, and when he says the money can't be found, he's convinced the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron the money can't be found on shore. He's got to go offshore. I've got to believe him.
Are you surprised, actually, how favorable the Kiwi media has been in the last week to him and against Mr. Dunphy? I think Grant's had quite a good go here in the media. Your friend, our friend, Todd Nile, Duncan Johnstone, and others have been quite favorable, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that, well, in the media, we are on the receiving end of an awful lot of press releases and briefings and stuff, and we have to weigh up what is being presented to us. I mean, you have the same thing, Tom. You have to present you have to, cogitate what's really being said to you, and you have to draw the dots. And I have to say, when I first saw the Kiwi home defence thing, I didn't draw any dots. I didn't, it's almost, it's out of fiction saying that Ernesto Bertarelli is involved, or Larry Ellison's involved, or Patrizio Bertelli. They're all trying to, it's just, it's a complete, wow. And then suddenly, you get briefings, you get people joining dots for you, and you go, crikey, is this really what's happening? And then the insistence on not saying who the backers are is just adds fuel to the fire. And none of us can accuse or say, or you have to be very careful here, but, there's questions to be answered, and that's all I think anyone's done is just to ask questions. And as I say, my website's had the biggest traffic I've ever seen. It's like the match of the America's Cup. It's huge, and it's all down in New Zealand. It's all in America as well. People are very interested in this story.
Well, you keep getting linked to by the Kiwi media, and of course we post just about every one of yours on a link to your blog posts on my Facebook page and on the Sailing Illustrated Facebook page, which have got combined well over 10,000 regular viewers, friends and so on. But let's go now to, so I'm not surprised, but now tell us about this guy, Mark Dunphy, who is the leader of the loyal opposition, the so-called home defense. Tell us what you think.
So it came from nowhere. And there wasn't even, look at this picture. That's probably about 15, 20 years ago. No one even had an up-to-date picture of him. Never really heard of him. He was called a rich lister down there. No one knows really. he worked for Michael Fay. He ran the Perth operation. He came back, and but we just nobody knew anything. And then suddenly there's been a few interviews with him, and he looks a little bit different to what, just a little older than he did in that photo you just showed. And if he's got backers who are, onshore backers, someone we haven't thought about, haven't heard about, and let's give the guy a break, as it were, and say, okay, so who have you may well have had a conversation, you may have had a conversation with Ernesto, you may have had but you've got some money. Great. Okay, who is it? It's a simple question, and there's lots of stuff going on about he's trying to get the Kiwi government to put more money in, and they've categorically said no. So I did this piece today called Sinking Ship. It feels like, it's a great idea. Kiwi home defense, brilliant idea. And I loved all the social media posts, and I've used it on my blog, and I really like it. But I've got a horrible feeling that it's being hauled below the waterline, and that actually the trust has gone completely between Team New Zealand and Kiwi Home Defence Team, and that they're never going to get round the table, and that we should all just forget about it. It's not going to happen. And that's the sense I get today. Right now, that's the sense that I've got.
Well, that was your headline this morning. Was it just sinking ? And you weren't talking, and when you post that, I posted it to my Facebook page, and the image that came up that Facebook grabs and puts in with your post was a picture of Grant Dalton and Glenn Ashby and Blair and Pete and Blair, and so it looks like sinking was ETNZ. When that, if you read your story, no, you're saying that this guy Dunphy is the guy in his effort, this home defense, Kiwi home defense is the thing that you asserted was sinking. But let's go back and talk some more, and I'm going to ask the FOSI here in our favorite segment, correct or crutonic, whether you think this guy, when we get to it, whether you think he is correct or crutonic. Is this guy just the latest? Is he a grifter? Is he an imposter? Is he trying to raise his own image in New Zealand at the expense of ETNZ? Or has he really got some people and some money and doing the right thing to try to help keep the cup in Auckland? But let's now move back to Michael Fay, who you mentioned, Magnus, who, as all, I'm sure most everyone on here knows, chaired TNZ in their first campaign in '87, and then again in '88 for the Big Boat Challenge in San Diego, which was it turned into the one-on-one, the so-called deed of gift match. And Sir Michael's a tough competitor, and apparently this guy Dunphy used to work for him and ran his Perth, Australia operations in the oil business, or one of Sir Michael's operations. And supposedly Michael Fay, I'm told, I haven't talked to Sir Michael, and I know him pretty well. We became friends actually after the '88 debacle. And I'm told that he is a backer of this guy Dunphy. What are you hearing?
Yeah, I'm hearing the same thing. I think there's rumors that he may be a backer, but I read all of the interviews that Michael did, and I struggled to find any kind of Machiavellian intentions or anything. He just seemed, yeah, I'll support it. I want the cup at home. But he didn't say very much. And the Kiwi media, I didn't bother using the quotes at all because I just couldn't find any angle with it. It's some guy just saying, yeah, I'm sort of mildly interested. It didn't really stack up to me. And I think the Kiwi media are really quick to try and put Dalton against Michael Fay. Oh, yeah. I would lay a strong bet, and I said this in one of my blog posts, that they have a Steinlager together in the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron, and they're very cordial to each other. I don't think there's much of a story there, and I think Dunphy's got some questions to answer. If he answers them, we're all going to look like chumps, and great, because I would love. I've said I want to be the 5 million and 5 million and first Kiwi supporter, because it needs to be in Auckland. It should be in Auckland. I don't think it's going to be in Auckland now, but it's a great campaign, and it should get the backing of the Kiwi people. It's certainly jingoistic enough to get the backing, and it's a shame if this turns out to be something other than what is actually proposed, and some people are behind the scenes. I think it's a catastrophic PR disaster for that person who's involved, because I don't think the Kiwi media will thank them. And if a link can be proven to the Swiss, the Americans, the New York Yacht Club, whatever, I think in the current climate, people are going to be pretty angry about the whole thing, and it's pretty disgraceful, really, way to go about it. It's not 2003 anymore.
But that's the real question: is there such a link to one of the other billionaires, and are they trying to undermine Dalton and ETNZ or not? But let's carry on and talk some more about some of the other people involved. This, of course, is a good friend of mine. I haven't talked to him in a while, and I've got to call into him, James Farmer, who's Queen's Counsel. He's one of the handful of very top lawyers in New Zealand and beyond. Former TNZ director, hell of a good sailor. He was on the Challenger Commission back in the day. as I said, a good friend, terrific guy. What are you hearing about Jim Farmer's involvement?
So Jim emailed me in the week and said he was going to use some of my original posts around positivity and get behind the Kiwi campaign. And then he wrote some very, very nice things about me, which kind of does his credibility no good whatsoever. But yeah, I mean, he put his claim in. He put his he's pro it being in Auckland. It should be in Auckland. I couldn't disagree with a single word that he said in his excellent blog post, particularly when he described my journalistic ambitions.
Of course.
Well, he's like you, is an avid blogger. He's got his what he calls his law blog or his legal blog, and he took your headline, Positivity, and he as have you and I. We've both been advocating for why don't these croutons get around the table, have a discussion, and sort it out, and not be airing all of this baggage and all of this stuff, the dirty laundry, in the proverbial media.
That's the thing, Tom. What I cannot understand, and I speak to both sides, is the game of ping pong that you're playing at the moment. It's wonderful for people like me. The actual helicopter view from the public is utterly dismayed. I've had texts and emails from people both in sailing and outside of sailing going, what the hell is going on? So can we just get around the table and try and, at least do I think Grant's pushed himself over to one side of the room and Dunphy's on the other side, and they're not coming together. I think just for the sake of it, they should get together and ask the questions, not in the media, but across the table. And why can't they do that?
Well, exactly. And at some point they're going to, but it looks like Dalton doesn't want any part of the event being in New Zealand.
Really?
I think he does not want it in New Zealand. It looks to me like he's trying to fend it off, trying to fend off Dunphy, trying to fend off anyone else that wants it in New Zealand. I think he fended off the government. And
I disagree.
I know you do, but this is why I'm saying, you disagree, Julia?
Yeah.
No, I think he's trying to fend it off, and he wants to go offshore because he knows there's a much better chance of raising the money offshore. Now, some of that money is going to go into his own pocket, and he thinks, and he said it over and over and again, if we leave it in New Zealand, we're not going to have a proper defense, and we're going to lose, just like 2003.
Tom, I massively disagree that he's trying to line his own pockets. Grant is independently wealthy. He is not in this to line his own pockets. I just have to disagree 100% with that.
Hang on. I didn't say he was in it to line his own pockets. I said that he would, in the process, raise some money for himself, but he thinks to raise the money for an effective defense, he has to go offshore. He has said that over and over again. The money is not in New Zealand, and they're going to lose if they don't go offshore, just like they did in 2003. Sure. I assert, Magnus, that if they go offshore, they'll lose the same way Oracle Team USA lost when they went to Bermuda in 2017. What do you think?
I don't think that's. I don't think that will happen. There's quite a lot still to run on that. Team New Zealand will still be top of the betting, whether it's in Cork, Jeddah, or Barcelona. It will be. That boat is a rocket ship. They have unlocked the DNA of the AC-75s. Everybody is playing catch up, and they are half a generation ahead. Now, that's where they start from. Who they have in their afterguard, how they refresh the team, where they get the money from. I think Grant he's not interested in contesting. And I made a point, and I made this big point that I think the Kiwi public deserve to have the cup in the country. And actually, if they lose, okay, it was a sort of a noble loss. Well, that went down like a lead balloon. They don't do noble losses. They are a winning machine, and I respect them for that. And Grant wants the maximum amount of money because he can see what is ranged against him. And what is ranged against him right now is Team Ineos with an open checkbook, potentially Ernesto Bertarelli with an open checkbook. And what he doesn't want to be is the poor player at the roulette table having to fold early because he just cannot compete with the money. So he's fighting tooth and nail to get the money, and he is saying he cannot raise that money in in New Zealand. He has to go offshore. That's his stance. He is not interested in contesting. He is interested in winning the America's Cup.
Okay, well, I think that's fair enough. And I think he has genuinely decided that he needs to go offshore, as I've said now myself a couple times. And there's a comment here by Mark. Are you going to read that? Mark Wharton Reed. The Kiwis have done, and I totally agree with Mark, the Kiwis have done more with less than any other team in AC history. And over and over and over. I mean, lest we forget, the Kiwis have been in the match. Except for the deed of gift match in 2010, they've been in the finals of every match since when? 95?
Mark is absolutely right. They have done more with less than any other team, and they are brilliant at it. And that's why I say if it was in New Zealand, they don't have to raise as much money because all the infrastructure is there. The boat builders are there, the technology is there, all their sims are there, all their mechatronics guys are there. They're at a huge advantage if they could do it.
And the Kiwi dollar is a better value because of the exchange rate with the US dollar or the euro or tell me what.
Yeah, let's say Gabe Newell came along and said, the guy who owns the Steam platform that I heavily contribute to through my 14-year-old son, if he came along and said, Here's 60 million US dollars. Hold the cup here. We're game on. And you never know. With Dunphy, he may have a player behind the scenes that we just don't know about and we haven't thought about. And I really hope that's the case because then that Grant will have to talk to them and he will have to hold the America's Cup in Auckland. And everything else is just, conversation.
Well, I think the first and the biggest mistake Mr. Dunphy made was to say that it was his way, meaning his Dunphy's way or the highway, and that for him to come in with all this money and all these backers, he was going to require that Mr. Dalton disappear, that he leave Team New Zealand. That's crazy because this guy can win the cup and he's better than anybody else. I've also long argued that they should split ACE and ETNZ and the defense and the event should be separate. And I also do not understand why the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron, and we saw it in yet another letter this week when Dalton wrote to Cork and said, don't deal with them, meaning Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron, deal with me. I'm large and in charge here, which, Julia, that started to sound a little bit like our former late great Secretary of State. And when, who was that? The General... Alexander Haig.
Yeah.
And who was it had a heart attack or something? And Haig walked into the press room and said, I'm in charge here. And of course he wasn't. It was the vice president who would take over after. So he has a little bit of, that, and that's rubbing, as that's rubbing some people in New Zealand the wrong way. But he's got to run the team. The idea that Dunphy's going to come in and take over the thing, I think that was a huge political and otherwise mistake.
I agree. And I'll agree with you that I think Grant potentially has too many roles. But I think there's a case of, who else do you get? And, there's been Stephen Tyndall retired.
Yep.
Kevin Shoebridge is around. But Grant is running the show. He is totally and utterly running the show. And it's Grant's way or the highway at the moment. And until... Dunphy came in but he rode back very quickly from it. And in his latest interview, standing on the street in Auckland, he was saying, no problems working with Grant, no problems. But look, the last statement from, it was on my blog, last statement from Grant is, the trust has gone. Now, you can't go into a relationship like that and the trust has got to be rebuilt. It's all wrong. I'm sorry.
And I must say, I saw that interview, and we're not going to run it here because, again, we don't want to get into back and forth with all these folks. But and he was standing down in someplace in the Central Business District being interviewed by, I can't remember who it was, TVNZ or something. And you're right, he not only looked a lot older than any of these other photos we have of him, more recent, obviously. This was just a few days ago, and he's got much longer hair. He looks kind of cool and with it, but yeah. I mean, much more so than I do, anyway.
I just really hope he's not a patsy for Bertarelli, and that Bertarelli and Ellison or whoever have just now abandon him and he's just going to, I just really hope that's not the story. And I really
twist slowly in the wind, Mr. Dunphy, Humpty Dumphy, as some people are calling him. I don't think he's I honestly, from what I hear, and I want to go to our next in our cast of characters here. I really don't think that anyone has stirred him up. I think he and other Kiwis, Jim Farmer, Michael Fay, and a few others said, hey, this event needs to stay here for the sake of the business community. You shaking your head, yes? You agree?
Yeah, I think so.
And that's why I don't think, now Daltz is saying, well, okay, one of these other guys, these billionaires, has come in and is using him as a stalking horse or something. I don't buy that for a minute. But let's go to our next cast of characters. You can see him up here on the screen. That's my next slide. What do you think of our mutual friend and FOSI? He's a regular here on the show. I can't get him to come on the show, by the way. He keeps saying, well, I'm pretty involved and busy right now. Dr. Hamish Ross, who's been an AC legal advisor since at least the 2000 Cup. I think that's when I first met him, leading up to the 2000 Cup, when he was actually the legal advisor for New York Yacht Club, as he was again last time. In the most recent Cup, he was working with New York Yacht Club. He's worked with other teams as well. He's worked with the event. He worked here in 2013. He was with America's Cup, the organizing committee. What do you think of, what do you think Hamish's role is in all this?
So the simple question that Grant Dalton asks today is, when you put that New York Yacht Club challenge, the sort of sub-challenge in, were you acting for the Kiwi home defense team? I mean, who knows? I mean, he's your friend. I follow him on Facebook, and he posts some lovely stuff on the history of the America's Cup. But is he involved? Did he? Has he been a go-between between the New York Yacht Club to talk about questioning the Royal Yacht Squadron Limited's validity in the Cup? Oh,
well,
crikey.
I don't know, and I've asked him, and he's declined. He said, "Look, I can't disclose any of client." So I assume he's involved somehow on that basis. Whether he's actually been in touch with New York or anybody else about legal stuff, I don't know. But I can say that I was approached, and I told you this by text early, I think this morning or late last night. I've been approached by some senior serious people wanting to know if I had any way of getting either New York, of which I joined New York in 1981 and was executive director of their campaign 87, yada yada, or if New York or Golden Gate Yacht Club would want to get involved in the legal angle of this, whether in the New York courts or otherwise, because some people are feeling like it's going to take a trustee or a former trustee to have standing before the court. I mean, you and I and Julia, we couldn't go in and file a lawsuit. We'd get laughed out of court. Likewise, probably Mr. Dunphy and anybody else who doesn't have a former and strong connection to the Cup. So I think that's what the angle is. Now, whether I hope not, and I've never heard anybody say they really want to go to court. I think everybody wants to avoid that. I, for one, don't think that the Royal Yacht Squadron, they've challenged now twice. No one's objected. Yeah, they changed their constitution, their meaning in the setup sense of the word, not their paperwork. Oh, they changed their paperwork a bit too. I don't think that's ever going to be an issue. Yep. That is the Royal Yacht Squadron. So we'll see what happens legally. Certainly Hamish is involved, but to what extent and how, I don't know. And I think we also should get a couple of the comments here. Gordon Smith in Denmark is saying, I don't think Daltz wants to leave Auckland. I think he simply needs to find the money, real cash, not in kind, and he hasn't had any good enough offer from anyone in NZ. Now, these other guys will tell you, no, he wants to go offshore because he wants to make a lot of money. He wants to get, I'm just telling you what I'm not saying that. That's what they are saying. And I want to come back because we're going to talk about real money in a sec. Mark Reed is saying their AC-75 program is light years ahead of everyone. I think we both agree with that. It is the Kiwis. David James, a noble loss in Auckland is better than a victory in Jeddah. Well, that's an interesting comment. Gordon Smith totally agrees with you that he really thinks that Daltz just wants to find the money somewhere. Bill Wingrove is saying Daltz going offshore for the money is exactly what is wrong with the direction they have taken with the America's Cup. And that's another argument a lot of people will make, Magnus, is that, and Julie, you've heard this over and over, that if the Cup were not so bloody expensive, that the budgets weren't eye-wateringly, 100 to 200 million whatevers, it wouldn't be necessary. You'd be able to go back and raise it. Julia.
Yeah, there are a couple comments that relate to that. Paul Holmchuk says, I see nothing wrong with the potential challengers chipping in to ensure the regatta will be held in Auckland. And David James says, Cork makes no sense. Valencia makes no sense. Jeddah makes no sense. Defend in Auckland. And if RNZ charges enough in entry fees that will pay for the race committee and umpires, beyond that, one simply wins or loses.
Well, it's the other thing that the Dunphy crowd are saying is that they're using the venue fee to pay for the defense, or a good chunk of the defense. That's why they need a Jeddah or somebody to come in. And I don't think you argue with that, do you? That's what they're doing.
I haven't really looked at that, to be honest. There was a £15 million payment that had to be made. Who knows? I haven't looked at that.
Well, there was all the venues were required to put earnest money, 15 million somethings. I don't know if it was pounds or euros, up with as earnest money with their venue agreement. And if they then were not selected, they'd get the money back. But the team, the venue that was selected, would pay that 15 million, because the team needs money. They need to keep operating. They've got some debts. They've got some other things they need to do, or so one hears.
I couldn't get any confirmation on that, though, Tom. I couldn't get a single person to tell me that was true. So
what is that? The debts or the 15 million up front? Yeah. Well, the 50. Yeah. I've seen the 50. I know that's true.
You know that's true. Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
And that's not unreasonable. I would, if I were out shopping the venue, I'd do the same thing. You'd have to, otherwise you get a pig in a poke. Somebody says, "Oh yeah, we select you," and then they can't perform. So it's like a performance bond or a guarantee. That doesn't bother me. A couple other comments here, and then let's continue through our cast of characters. Julie Ahrens is saying, and this is what you're saying. Dunphy has been so vague, it's hard to believe anything he says. And, that's right. He has been vague. And that I did not get a lot of confidence in that interview you referred to a minute when he was in the streets of Auckland last, I guess it was Friday. That
didn't say anything.
I think it was Saturday in Auckland. And when we went off the air Friday, he was there and he almost looked deer in the headlights, frankly, in that interview. I said that to Julia. We watched it here. Stingray or somebody sent it to us, right, Julia? Fritz Mueller is saying, keep it in New Zealand, up the ante for competitors to challenge pay to play. Well, okay. Stingray, who's also been arguing that Stingray's a avid guy up in Seattle. I don't know if we know his real name, but he's shy, shall we say. I suspect the Dalts should go, quote unquote, sentiment is related to his ACE role, not his ETNZ role. Well, that's not what Mr. Dunphy said, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, Haig, Paul Homchik said it was General Haig when Reagan was shot. Julie Aaron saying, I'd like to see grassroots fundraising, penny jars, anything to raise money. Well, I think, yeah. And of course,
doesn't add up.
The late Sir Peter Blake did that with the Red Sox campaign. Morris Stevens, was that incident with Haig? Okay, yeah, okay, good. Let's go back to other casts. Anything else about Hamish before we leave Dr. Ross?
Tom. You've got to get him on.
Yeah, well, I've asked him to come on. You were first in line because you've been writing so eloquently and a lot. You've been very prolific, and we love it, and we love what you're doing, and a lot of other people do, and that's why you're getting a lot of views, which is great, and I appreciate. You've been on the show now, what, 4 or 5 times, 6 times by now?
Yeah.
Pedro Foiling Sailor, did you see this comment, Julia? Long hair indicates you're in lockdown unless your wife can use scissors.
Missed it.
Yeah, okay. So a lot of people are saying, and Kim Panel is saying, if Dunphy was being truthful, and no reason to believe he wasn't, he said he was dealing with ACE and RNZYS months ago with proposals. Why is there crickets from RNZ? Well, I think that's a fair point. And I said in my little screed on my Facebook page a week ago, where's the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron in this? They're the trustee. They're the defender. They need to stand up. They need to grab Daltz and Mr. Dunphy and quietly sit them down, buy them a beer, and sit down and see if there's really anything that can be hammered out there or not. And if not, then they should come out publicly and say, look, we've given this our best shot. We're the defender trustee. We're sticking with Mr. Dalton. Or there's a germ of something here, and we're hoping between Jim Farmer, who's a great guy, by the way. You've now been dealing by email with Jim. He is a terrific guy, smart guy, has done a lot in sailing, and particularly in the Cup over the last, 20, 25 years. He could come in and sort this out, I think.
Here's the thing, Tom. If you were, a multi-millionaire rich lister, why would you do all of this and put websites out and hire PR people, start talking to the media if there was nothing behind it? You would look ridiculous, surely. So I kind of come back to it and think, well, maybe Mr. Dunphy has actually got something, and he's going to surprise us all. Because if he hasn't, then surely this is just ridiculous.
I agree, and I suspect what he did, he put his finger up, his hand up, and he said, look, this event's got to stay here. And and he talked to a few of his buddies. He probably starting with Michael Fay. He knows him. He worked for him. And then somehow Jim Farmer and Hamish Ross, and I'm not sure who all else got involved. And they said, yeah, don't worry. If you will front this thing and you can get this going, we'll chip in. And then Grant Dalton, the tiger that he is, came in. He started firing back at all these guys saying, yeah, there's there's offshore foreign stuff. And, it starts to sound like our politics here in this country between the Democrats and the Republicans, when really the Democrats and Republicans need to sit down quietly and stop posturing and pontificating and sort a few things out, because we got some real problems. But let's carry on with our cast of characters, shall we? After Hamish, and this is the website we keep referring to, KiwiHomeDefense.com, spelled in the Commonwealth way, DEFENCE, or CE.
The proper way.
Knew that was coming.
The proper way. And why they did this, well, I guess they're trying to rally the troops. Clark Chapin on one of our FOSI is saying, although grassroots fundraising is a lovely concept, you can't hold enough bake sales in a country the size of New Zealand to fund an AC campaign unless the sheep all chip in too.
That's true.
And,
it's brilliant. I mean, the website's brilliant, and the little graphics are fantastic. And yeah, you wouldn't do this unless you can't go and get the hope of a nation who are in lockdown right now, and I think Auckland's in level 3 at the moment. You can't go and get their hopes up, and then if anything is true about Machiavellian intentions and things, it's just a horrible trick to pull on the Kiwi people. It really is. And I really hope that this is more than what we are seeing right now.
Okay, well, now let's go to Julia's got
There's a couple little points have come up. Tom Pace says American Magic paid $1 million US just to get their boat to New Zealand. And the ante is up by geography alone, which is one part. And then Sean Patterson says, unfortunately, the Cup in Auckland isn't great for sponsors, including ETNs, and anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere would provide more recognition and challenge.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Yeah, that is true. Rick Hayes is saying, is this all really any different from the colorful history of the politics and big money antics of the AC? The off-season AC politics provide entertainment and is difficult to get excited about it, or is this different? Well, let's move to our cast of characters, continuing cast of characters. Here's the next one, and you have asserted, Daltz has asserted to you and to others, and you've written about it, that somehow Ernesto Bertarelli, and there's 3 people, Ernesto, of course, the backer of Alinghi, when they took the Cup from New Zealand, the first person ever to win the Cup on his first attempt, the first challenger to ever win the Cup on his first attempt, in 2003. And whether or not he is behind any of this, have you talked to him? Do you know?
No. Look, I think where we've all had to be very careful about this is to take one step back and say, if you were a challenger and you were used to winning the America's Cup, what tactics would you use today, knowing that there's a rocket ship that's half a generation ahead of you? Why would you even consider spending any money at all on the America's Cup, $100 million, whatever it's going to cost, and go into it just to lose money? And you go into it with a tactic, which is I want to know, I want the best boat, I want the data from the best boat, I want the people from the best boat. And if you're Patrizio Bertelli, if you're Ernesto Bertarelli, if you are, I don't know, Elon Musk and you want to do it, if you are Jeff Bezos and you wanted to do it, you look at the best and you try and do. So as commentators, we have to put ourselves in the position of how would you now win the America's Cup? Now, Jim Ratcliffe is doing it one way and almost removing design and going for a design team with Mercedes, and they've got all the data and everything from the last Cup. Great. If you're Patrizio Bertelli, you've got a lot of data from the last Cup, so you're probably, you got to the match, so you know what you're doing. If you're Ernesto Bertarelli or somebody else wanting to go into the America's Cup, you have no data, you're going to get offered the boat twos, and that's not good enough. So then you're going to go after people, you're going to go after and then try and somehow get the design data. That's the theory, at least. That's what is being espoused. Ernesto is not saying anything. The Alinghi team is competing on lakes in Switzerland, and it is the usual cast of characters from the Yves de Trey, the bowman, to the guys that have sailed with him for ages. There's no indication that he's involved. Seahorse is brilliant at any Ernesto Bertarelli rumors. They just put yawn at the end of everything. It's a hackneyed story, but there is a fear that he is in, and he was at some point behind or involved with Dunphy, and that's the question that's being asked by Team New Zealand. Is that the case? And then also, we're all asking, where are Pete and Blair? Are they signed to Team New Zealand, or are they not signed to Team New Zealand? If they're not signed to Team New Zealand, where are they?
Yeah, but you yourself said, and it wasn't even a hint, you said, oh, guess who was in Switzerland last week? After the Sail GP and wherever it was.
It was a couple of weeks ago, yeah.
A couple of weeks. And do you think those guys are being courted by Ernesto Bertarelli for an America's Cup campaign? I also have heard that he has been shopping around trying to buy B1 either from Luna Rossa Prata Pirelli or from a cash-strapped ETNZ. What are you hearing about that?
There's all the rumors. The Blair and Pete one won't die. They're going to be in Cadiz at the beginning of October. It's got to be the first question at the press conference, but you can guarantee that question they won't answer anything. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not aware that they have signed for Team New Zealand.
They have not signed for Team New Zealand, so they are on the market. And you think
I'm not aware that they've signed for Team New Zealand. Then no one will tell me straight that they have signed for Team New Zealand. So what's going on? And I think that's the smoking gun of this whole thing. Where are they going? If they're not signing for Team New Zealand, where are they? Well, now let's hope tomorrow morning that they turn around and say, yeah, we've signed, because I don't think they've signed as it stands tonight.
Well, I tend to agree with Seahorse on this one. Yawn. If Ernesto was going to get involved, we'd know, we'd think we'd know, we'd hear. He's not going to come in unless he can do what he did in 2003, come in and win and have a high percentage chance of winning, which means getting either TNZ's B1 or Luna Rossa's B1, probably TNZ's, and getting some top talent. But there's one other reason I don't think he's involved or will be involved. That's because of the nationality rule that Jim Ratcliffe and Grant Dalton have put in, that everybody keeps saying have put into the protocol. And if they put in a very strict nationality rule, how is Ernesto and the Swiss going to field a team?
I
especially
agree
if Tuke and Burling.
I think what's happened in the last week will mean he's out. But I put it in my blog today. You know, billionaires are very different to you and I. They think differently, and you know, he may well find a way, but that way is going to be taking on Jim Ratcliffe and taking Jim Ratcliffe to court. And I tell you what, I wouldn't want to be on the other side of that courtroom against Jim Ratcliffe, because you know he is, you know, a fighter, and I think, you know, Ernesto could well have met his match there, if that is the case, if they try and challenge the nationality rule.
Well, you know who else is rumored to be a litigious character? Mr. Dunphy. One hears he's got a history of legal entanglements, and that's why I think, in fact, I won't go into that, but I think he and Jim Farmer have been on opposite sides of some court cases down there. So it's interesting they might be together now. Patrizio Bertelli, you talk. I'll play the sound effect again, but you talk about it's just crickets coming out of there. Have you talked to Max? Have you heard anything more out of LRPP?
No, so I mean, you know, Max is going around. He was at some yacht club this weekend, doing a show and talking about the Prada campaign. Obviously, Checo was in Lake Garda at Mount Chesney doing the International Moth World Championships, but
and sailing well.
Yeah, and what was he? Fifth, sixth, something like that.
He was in the top 10 easily. Yeah, maybe top 5.
But yeah, you know. Bertelli is, you know, he's taken the boats back to Cagliari, I think it is, and nothing, zero. But you know, silence is golden with those guys, and I think the Italians are brilliant for the Cup, and I really desperately want to see them back in the next one. And let's hope he doesn't get, you know, he's been a brilliant benefactor, and indeed. I don't think involved in any of this, you know, is involved in any of this whatsoever, and I think he sails above all of that. But it's the America's Cup, Tom. Who knows?
The American Cup boat race, which is why I call it that. But it's the people who are not sailors. What is that called? If you're just joining us for an hour and a few minutes into our show number, what is this, Julia? 455. Of TFE Live. We do this every Tuesday and Friday. Our guest today, esteemed guest, is Magnus Wheatley, who is the editor, owner, consummate scribe, yachting scribe. He's semi-retired now, having made a lot of money in the city in London, moved to the Isle of Wight, raising his young family, and we've been friends for a long, long time, and it's nice to see you back on the blogosphere with the Rule 69 blog.
Mm-hmm. It's nice to be back from COVID as well.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that before we move ahead to one or two of these other characters, because you had breakthrough COVID, right? It was
breakthrough COVID. I was double vaccinated, and I don't know where I caught it from. And let's be absolutely honest here. I've had worse hangovers, but it just went on and on and on for 10 days, 11 days. I still can't smell anything. I still struggle to taste stuff. Unfortunately, I gave it to my son as well, but he recovered very quickly. But again, he's got this taste and smell issue. And people like Andrew McIrvin have been absolutely brilliant to me, and huge thanks to him advising me. But yeah, it was horrible for 10 days, lying in bed. I've never felt so tired, sleeping for like 21, 22 hours a day. And the only thing you can do is have paracetamol and lots of water and sleep. It's quite a lonely disease, actually, because you're in isolation and nobody wants to be anywhere near you, which suits me fine.
Well, it was like when I did my face plant back here on the bookcase, walking into the studio the morning that Afghanistan came apart, and people thought that somebody from the Royal Yacht Squadron had caught me on the street here.
Was the day after you accused the Royal Yacht Squadron of, having a dodgy club, and you don't mess with those grinders, I tell you.
Well, and of course that didn't happen, and I didn't accuse them of that. By the same token, there are people thinking that maybe you did not have breakthrough COVID. Maybe you had something else and somebody had gotten through to the Russians and they'd slipped you a Mickey there in one of your beers at the eye, someplace on the in cows.
Yeah, I had a Swiss injection. Yeah, yeah. No,
watch out. They're not
strange,
poisoning you.
Yeah, it's a very strange. It's a very strange disease, and it's you don't want to get it. I promise you.
Well, so far so good, and the debate now is whether we're going to get the boosters. The people our age, they've been recommended. I guess our Food and Drug Administration put the kind of slowed it all down, right?
Yes, I'm going to wait.
You are. Hey, Julia, over your shoulder now on this PIP is the next gentleman we want to get Magnus to opine on, because there was some word that Larry Ellison was, Daltz is asking, is Ellison involved? I think that is a complete, what's the word? I think that's a red herring. I don't, I haven't talked to Larry myself, but for him to be involved in this would be, I think, a huge surprise. What do you think?
I think it'd be a huge surprise, and I'm not sure Larry deals with, people at Mark Dunphy's wealth. I'd find it incredible if he is involved. He's busy as hell with Sail GP. What a fantastic series that is. I don't see he's got any interest in the America's Cup at the moment. I don't think he's interested in building Sail GP. Maybe he's interested in seeing the Cup not do well, but I think that's very Machiavellian. My personal view is he's not involved. He may have been involved in a conversation, but it would have been via an associate, via somebody that knows him, via Brad Butterworth to Russell Coutts to something like that. But it's not. There's no direct thing with Larry at all at the moment, I don't think.
Well, exactly, and maybe somebody's contacted Russell and said, "Hey, Russell, do you think Larry might be interested in this?" Or maybe Brad, who was working for Patrizia during the last Cup, and of course is close to Hamish Ross because they've been mates. They co-own that classic yacht together, and maybe Brad called up Russell. And I just don't see Russell and Brad being there. As you say, they're very busy with what has turned into a big success, I think, I hope, with Sail GP, although I guess the regatta now down in Christchurch in New Zealand has been canceled once and for all because of COVID and COVID concerns. So that brings us, Larry, the last one that brings us to this gentleman. What is really going on with Jim Ratcliffe, Sir James, who is the owner of Ineos Team UK and a number of other major sports properties, franchises? What is going on? Where's Sir Ben Ainsley, and what's going on with the design team? And what's Daltz telling you about absolutely positively there being no one-on-one America's Cup in the Solent?
So my view is that Jim Ratcliffe is the person that Dalton actually respects, has a friendship with, and is probably privately quite scared of him. I think Jim's an incredible character. I think he's very straight. I think he talks the same language as Daltz, and they will push this America's Cup forward. They will, the whole thing with the AC40s, my understanding is it was on Jim's desk to sign, and he gave his signature willingly. Which is incredible, because all the shenanigans that have been going on, I wouldn't be at all surprised if, he's got business interests, or he's got huge business interests. He's got a football club. He's got the Tour de France team, which is huge.
Formula One team.
He owns a third of Mercedes, which is key to the next part of your question. The Mercedes F1 team. He's got a brand new, fantastic 4x4 called the Grenadier, named after a pub that used to be around the corner from me in London, that he's launching. He's got so much going on. And this is key, because if somebody with equally big dollars came up and said, we're going to drag this through the New York Supreme Court for the next, I don't know, 3 years, I just try and put myself into his shoes. I'd be like, forget this. I'm going to go and do something else. I've got too much on my plate to be dragged through the New York Supreme Court. And maybe that is a tactic, and maybe that's something they're playing on. But there's no indication. He may, as far as I've heard, he's a real fighter. And if somebody took him to court, he would fight it. So, yeah, he's grabbed the America's Cup team in Britain, and it's everybody defers to Jim. No doubt at all, he is in charge. So, and I think it's interesting with you look on the Mercedes F1 website, and there's all these adverts for jobs that I can't even work out what they are, let alone I can't even understand, let alone try and apply for them. I can't even read and understand the actual text of the application, what the job adverts. So yeah, it's very interesting with Ineos what they're doing, and Ben's doing really well on the SailGP circuit. The team, there's no announcement. We don't know who's on the team, who's out. Is Goodison in? Where is Giles Scott? Is he in the team? I have no idea. They're absolutely ziplock. They're totally ziplock mouths on everything. And I think they also keep the yacht squadron very, in the dark. And there are very, very strict NDA agreements there not to speak to anybody. And I kind of respect that. They're not.
Exactly. You have to. Exactly. Jody Shields, our good friend, you must know Jody, over in Wanji, north of Sydney. ETNZ need to remember that the government funding that they have relied on for the past few cycles of the Cup have come from the taxes of hardworking families that would feel very upset that the team is now just looking for a payday. Loyalty is a very powerful tool. What do you think?
I don't get this thing about a payday. I just think I think Team New Zealand are trying to compete in what could be an absolute red hot environment. And they need money to compete. They don't just need to scrape. This isn't going to be an America's Cup that is going to be won just by scraping through. And noble defeat, as we've talked about, is not what they want to do. They want to defend the America's Cup. Dalton is about winning. And that's the key point for everyone. There's no paydays. There's no people are going to walk off with millions of dollars and live in mega mansions. Dalton already lives in a mega mansion. It doesn't need it. It's about winning the America's Cup, and he is a pure sportsman, trying to win the America's Cup. I firmly believe that, and all of my dealings with him, it comes through loud and clear.
Good, Julia.
There's a whole string of things of alternative ways to raise money, and Luca Craig says we need a few lotto draws here in New Zealand to raise some money for ETNZ. People seem happy to buy tickets every Wednesday and Saturday.
Well, and a lot of our states do that, and supposedly the money goes to the education of the schools and the students, but that doesn't necessarily happen. It goes to the general fund, so you never know about politicians, right, Magnus?
Yeah, well, we win gold medals in the UK in sailing
with your national lottery. Well, you do that in spades, that is for sure. Well, there's tons of comments, and we could probably sit here. Tom Pace is saying, have to sign out. Great show, thanks. There were lots and lots of comments, and Julia likes, Luca Craig is saying, Peter Burling and Blair too couldn't come back to New Zealand if they wanted to sail between SailGP, as they couldn't be guaranteed spaces in quarantine. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
So that's another. This whole situation. The Kiwis and the Aussies who can't. They can leave the country, but if they do, they can't necessarily get back in because there is that lottery for how many spaces you get and so on and so forth. And that Daltz has been saying, and I get that one of the reasons they haven't gone to visit these venues, they've had Sir Keith Mills and his Origin Sports Group have been doing those site visits and recce's, as they call them, reconnaissance. But if you can't go yourself, or you can go, but then you can't get back into your home country because of this COVID-0 stuff. You had vax, you got it, you break through, you live to talk about it. You didn't go to the hospital. We're all going to get this. We got to get McIrvin back on here, Julia. because there's more and more news about COVID. And yes, Peter Stevenson, Pedro Foiling Sailor, asked again, were you double vaxxed when you got this? And the answer is,
yeah.
And you still can't smell?
No, it's very weird. I have this smell of petrol in my nose, and I can't get rid of it. And so I walk around the house and I go, "Can you smell that? Can you smell that?" And my wife's sort of looking at me, going, "Smell what?" And I'm going, "This is smell of like gasoline," and that just lingers, and it's really horrible, to be honest.
Mm-mm.
Well, speaking of petrol, we know that that's what Sir Jim Ratcliffe's business is. He's been a refiner for a long, long time. Some people use derogatory terms for what he does, but he produces energy for at least the carbon-consuming world. What are his connections to Saudi Arabia? And with Formula One going to Jeddah in December for the first time, what do you think are the connections there, if any?
So you can try and find the link, but I can't find anything on that at all. And other than his Formula One team is going to Jeddah at the beginning of November, there's no link that we can for sure say. And just because he's in petrochemicals, which is slightly different from oil, from dealing with Saudi Arabian oil production, I don't think there's a link there. I'm sure it would look very favorable in that industry, but it's a hugely secretive industry. And, when we talk about Jeddah, I had people who I've never met before, who I have no idea who they are, telling me on email and on texts, telling me that Jeddah was nailed on, certainty, lots of money, great venue. We're going to build the living daylights out of a certain downtown part of Jeddah. And it's going to be the greatest America's Cup, ever. It's going to be the greatest America's Cup since 1987. And I kind of looked at it and thought, okay, well, if it's not going to be in Auckland, then let's go crazy, camp, kitsch, amazing, And they have literally, I have not heard a single word from them for 2 weeks now. And it's interesting because Arabian negotiation is different to the negotiation that you and I might have in the Western world. So, and I watched your show, was it last week? And you said suddenly they've woken up to the fact that teams are going to be there for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't a heavyweight boxing championship. This isn't 4 days or well, actually it's probably 5 days that the Formula One teams are in, and then they fly out. This isn't superbikes. This isn't.
It's not a tennis tournament or a golf tourney for a week or two. Yeah, exactly.
And then I was looking at the weather profile, and I was looking at the weather profile today. There was 21 knots of breeze out there, and then it dies to 9. And there's not a lot of wind. But Jeddah, the Jeddarati, as I call them, have gone completely and utterly silent on me. Mm. So I kind of suspected that either the money was being dropped, and in that part of the world, they don't like to admit defeat. So they will sort of even deny they were in the process, I reckon, if they don't get it. And it's a weird one. I'm less convinced Jeddah's going to happen, but if it did, well, American Magic would be out. I don't think Ben Ainsley is particularly happy about going there. I don't think Team New Zealand would be the only ones doing it for the money.
And I think that the whole deal about women not sailing or not being part of it is going to, at least from the American point of view, is going to be really.
Yeah, I mean, it's just disgraceful, and I can't put up with that.
Magnus, I think you're right. I don't see it happening. I really never saw it happening. I thought it was a stalking horse. And that also sounds like everything that you're reporting and everything I am hearing is that Dalton is now making a big push back on Cork, Ireland, trying to talk them in to coming to play, coming back into and getting serious. He's also pushing real hard on this guy, Francesco De Leo, who was originally part of the Valencia effort and has split away and said, oh, yeah, but if you don't want Valencia and if they can't get it, I can get Barcelona or Palma. God forbid they go out the Canaries now with what's going on out there. But nonetheless, that isn't going to happen either. I know Francesco De Leo. He's a nice guy. He's a well-meaning guy. But, you know, well.
Tom, it isn't going to happen today.
Well, that's the other problem. Is it going to happen anytime soon, let alone today? So Cork seems to be the only one other than Auckland. And I want to ask you comment on any of that. Then I want to ask you about the Solent.
So with Cork, there was Richard Gladwell reported this fantastically well. The Irish newspapers over the weekend are just literally throwing pelters at each other. And there's two sides of the camp here. There is, we are, coming out of the pandemic. We should be investing in sporting events and bringing great prestige to Ireland. On the other side of the fence, people say, well, if you've got 150 million euros to spend on infrastructure and building bases and having a pretty yacht race, hold on, we've just come out of a pandemic and we need money for vital services, mental health service, everything else. You can see both sides of the coin. What I don't like, and I think you said it very well, is when America's Cup bidders start going around saying the America's Cup is only bigger than it was only smaller than the Olympics, the all world. I mean, I think you made that up, didn't you, Tom?
No, but it's been in the shall we say the literature. I didn't make that up, but
I'm calling you out. I reckon that's got the hallmark of Tom Ehman.
No, but certainly I was one of the many people involved in repeating that, and for a while you could make that argument. After 87, which is when we started talking, because I was then running San Diego 88, 92, and you could argue that after 87, in terms of the television eyeballs that 87 got on ESPN, and I can't remember BBC or whoever carried it in the UK and so on, and across Australia and New Zealand and 87 was a big deal, and in terms of impact, probably on television eyeballs was as third or fourth or fifth. Now that was Bernie Ecclestone was creating Formula One into a big deal at the same time, and it's now a bigger deal. And you've got, besides the Olympics and FIFA World Cup, you've got a few. The World Rugby Cup, but it's still the America's Cup sometimes is a big deal. And everyone on here, you and I, Julia, everybody involved, we love to see it go back to 87 proportions, 87 stature, but it doesn't look like, my argument has been all along, is that when you have campaigns, remember what the budget was in 87. Do you know what the budget was for the big, I ran New York's team as executive director. You know what our budget was in 87 for a 4-year campaign in half a world away in Perth?
I'll go $6 million.
So it was 16. But that was to build 3 12 meters, and that was a gold-plated campaign, no question. Dennis raised almost that and won on 16 mil. I don't know what the Kiwis raised and spent, but they were darn good with Michael Fay and the Plastic Fantastics. They built 3 boats. So, and we had 13 teams, challengers, and 4 defenders. We had 17 teams, and that was the high water mark. We will all like to get back to that, but we're not going to get back to that when we have such exotic technology in campaigns that don't cost $16 million for a 4-year campaign. Okay, run that up by inflation times 2 or 3 even. Run it up to $50 million. But when you're running campaigns that cost $150 to $200 million or more, with technology that's so exotic that there's so much unobtainium or the perception of unobtainium, how do you get teams to come in and do that?
There's another thing we've talked about.
Hang on, Julia, make a point, and then we'll go to you, Magnus.
There's another thing we've talked about before, the new infrastructure that everybody seems to be requiring for is almost always not necessary. And all we have to do is look at the Olympics and say every Olympics gets overbuilt and unused, except one, and that was in LA when they used existing
largely in '84.
Yeah.
But Magnus, exactly, Julia, and Magnus, you've made that point too. That one of the great benefits of Auckland is the infrastructure's there. we don't have to create a whole nother venue out of whole cloth and spend a lot of money on that on the event side. This is, after all, and Dalton said this the other day on the radio interview with the morning show on Friday, I guess it was. He said, this is, after all, just, he didn't say silly sailboat race. That's what I say. It's just a regatta.
Yep.
You don't need to have, villages and all this other stuff. You need a big screen TV and a nice part of someplace close to the team bases where you can watch the boats come into their bases.
But Tom, I had this notion really beaten out of me by somebody who will remain nameless, who said that the America's Cup is actually incredibly cheap. Because if you look at a Premiership football, soccer team in the UK, the team that I support spent £220 million on the transfer season, and will probably, and that's just a small window in a year, and then they will probably spend around about another £100 million in the next transfer season, which opens, I think, in January. If you look at Formula One, it's £200 million a year, or 200 million, yes, £200 million a year, I think it is, per year to compete in Formula One. So when you say, okay, let's say Ratcliffe spent 130, 110, whatever numbers he spent last time, from a multi-billionaire's point of view, it's actually relatively cheap. Now, from a sponsorship angle and saying I need to go and raise corporate dollars, yes, it's a large ask. If you can get people like Microsoft or Amazon or Tesla or those kind of guys involved, this is chump change. This is not it's not eye-watering as we perceive it to be.
Hey, Magnus, that's wrong. Let me tell you why. Let me stop you there. First of all, you got butts and seats. You got a lot of ticket revenue. You got much better television deals, whether it's your pro sports, our pro sports, rugby even, and cricket. You've got tennis and golf. You've got not just sponsorship dollars, but you've also got ticket sales. But there's one other thing that we're all missing, which is what Larry and Russell are trying to do with SailGP, and that is what? Franchise value. You can afford to lose some money in the process of year in and year out with transfer fees and salaries for players and so on, or at least break even or not make a pile. And if you spend $250 million or more for a franchise that the year after is worth $350 million, it's the franchise value. And sadly, in the America's Cup, there's no franchise. It's build it up and then it's gone. And you don't own a damn thing except maybe some obsolete boats and some IT, some IP. And that's the problem.
And if you've got the cost at not at, say, Ratcliffe levels, but you've got at, say, American Magic levels, does it work as a plaything? It's an America's Cup. If you'd won it, huge prestige. I don't know. It really it's always been a very, very rich man's game.
Yeah.
Trying to turn it into SailGP, which again is a rich man's plaything at the moment. It may turn into a franchise. I guess when the cycle comes round, and all the top guys are now in the America's Cup and they've all been dragged back into their teams. What will happen? Will the prestige still be there when we're talking about, I don't know, Billy Besson wins in Cadiz? I doubt whether I will even cover it. I'm more interested in Outeridge, Slingsby, Ainsley. I want those names. Those are the people they're the Formula One pilots that we're really interested in. SailGP is a great thing right now. Is it going to be a great thing in the future? Will it keep all the top people in there? If it doesn't, what does it become? Is it a feeder series to the America's Cup? What is it? And that's where I struggle with SailGP. I think it's fabulous, by the way. I think it's wonderful racing, and I'm very favourable towards it. But does it have what Larry and Russell wanted to have, which is that long-term franchise value? When the America's Cup has got such a cachet and can dominate headlines for weeks and weeks and weeks, SailGP is Formula One on the water, but without the intrigue.
Well, if we knew the answer to that, then we'd go. But Julie, you've got lots of cool comments.
Yeah. Well, Fritz Nuller says, make it a gambling venue rather. On any given weekend in the U.S., millions of dollars are involved. And the Super Bowl pool is larger than many countries' economies.
Yeah, well, true, and there is, gambling could be a part of it, but really what we have to do
It
is
doesn't
scale.
fit the image. I'm sorry, but
we have to scale back. I mean, let's all admit it, guys. We got to scale this back to an affordable level.
Yeah.
For teams. You don't want to make it another weekend regatta. You don't want this to be the 52, the Super Series.
Yeah.
It's still got to have an air of big boats and, not quite unobtainium, but we've gotten too far. We've gotten too carried away.
Agree.
And that's why we only got 3 or 4 teams for the last X many cups. Fritz Mueller, regarding Olympic venues, think München, the Olympiastadion, and Kiel, Schilksee Harbor in Kiel, which still gets lots of use, built during the games back in 72. Was it? Jonathan Frank, yeah, but nobody in the general population understands or even cares about sailing. That's another problem, Magnus, that you agree. There's only a handful of that really follow it closely, except in 87. It started to get some general interest because of all the teams. There were 17 teams, 4 defenders, 13 challengers, a lot of countries involved. Farley Fontenot, you must know Farley, great sailor, great sailmaker, but the gate and television rights for pro football or motorsports are huge. So that's why they're profitable. That's where Sail GP is going to have a problem, because I'm not sure they're going to be able to put butts in seats. And so far, it's thanks to Larry's largesse, which, thank God, we've got Larry who's still pilot. The guy's put in, he's got to put in, I've done a back of the envelope calculation, in fact, with you at one point, of well over $1 billion into the sport. Thank goodness for people like him and these other, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe and so on, and Patrizio Bertelli, and Ernesto Bertarelli. Thank God for these people, men and women.
All right.
Bruce Hudson, agree with you, Tom. No franchise value, smaller fan base. Bill Wingrove, build a container. Bill Wingrove says, build a container village like the Volvo did. It was neat and highly poured. Well, there's another problem, is that the idea of adding these 40-footers, requiring the teams to acquire 40-footers and support teams in the women's and youth, as admirable as I think, and you think that is, it's a huge additional expense. You're not going to make more money by supporting those teams. The other problem is, and this was Ernesto's grand idea, was to have the so-called actos, the acts, have this movable feast, moving the event. We had 13 different acts around the world leading up to the 07 Cup. It was hugely expensive for teams to do that. And Russell, with our effort, carved that back leading up to 13 by using older boats, the 45s, moving them around en masse, having some economies of scale. But the truth is, the New York Yacht Club formulation of going to Newport, having a summer of the Cup, and people sailing from June, July, August, September after they trained in their home waters leading up to that. Then they come to Newport, train, have the trials, and then the match finally is in September. And then people went away for 3 years and did it again. And they didn't have world championships. They didn't have the acts. They didn't have the America's Cup World Series. We've got to get back to that. We've got to cut the expense out of this in the Exotica so that we get teams from the major yachting nations that come and thrash it out, hopefully in Auckland, hopefully in the waters of the defending club. Or I still don't understand. You tell me why. You knew I was going to ask this question. We didn't even talk about this in the tech check. I still think that if they can't get their arms around Auckland, forget about Jeddah for all the reasons we know. Cork, yeah, it'd be nice if they could come to fruition, but I don't see how that's really going to happen given the political back and forth we've all seen in the papers, as you said last weekend. Spain has got all sorts of political problems there, the separatist movement and the Catalans in Catalonia and Barcelona and so on. Why did this not come together, or is this not coming together, or is there still a chance it will come together? And you know where I'm going to ask, in the Solent.
Tom, it's not happening in the Solent.
Why?
It just isn't. There isn't the will. That it's just not on the table. It's everybody you talk to. The boatyards have been were originally sounded out about it. The feasibility study was done. It's not going to happen. It just is not going to happen, Tom. And I checked this morning with Dalton. I asked him the direct question, and there's no dice in the Solent. It just is not happening. 2022, 2024, it's not happening.
Again, why? Is it because there was no way to make money for ETNZ to help fund their budget? It was because Jim Ratcliffe didn't want to help fund ETNZ? Is it because there were not facilities, and it doesn't have to be in Cowes. There are no facilities in Southampton or Portsmouth, or what was the problem?
No, Tom, you're completely and utterly wrong there. It does have to be in Cowes because I live in Cowes.
I knew that was coming.
Well, I would love it to be in Cowes too. It's the spiritual heart of sailing. If not in the UK, it's the spiritual heart of sailing probably in the world. I mean, you think of the Cup starting there and everything else that goes on. And, we have John Emmett on in the show here in a few minutes. And, okay, he's over at Itchener Sailing Club today. And then you get young guys like we led at the top of the show, Matty Whitfield, who's just a terrific kid and sailor. And your country dominates again at the Olympics. Why don't we have an America's Cup? And one last point. The 2001 Jubilee, the America's Cup 150th celebration, we were all there, was the best regatta any of us have ever been to, full stop. Right?
Yeah. 100. It would be spectacular. It would be amazing. And I have commentators, people who comment at the end of my blog saying that I'm the biggest tub thumper for Cowes. It has to be here. I think it has to be here when it's been won. And it would be magnificent. Cowes would be rocking. We're ready to host it. I stood on the green watching the Fastnet race go off, the Rolex Fastnet race, in 30 knots of breeze. It was magnificent. It's one of the greatest things I have ever seen. I was in full armchair mode. And everybody, there was thousands of people along the green. Probably not thousands, probably hundreds, but there was an awful lot of people down on the green watching it. If the America's Cup came here, it would be as good as Auckland. And that's saying something because Auckland has been a fabulous host of it. I think going to Cork, I think the world will come to Cork. I think people will, the locals there would do a very good job, very knowledgeable, and would be fantastic. Same in, if it goes to Jeddah though, I don't think you'd get any kind of atmosphere like that. It would be all international people, and the locals would look at it rather oddly.
God forbid it goes to Jeddah.
You got to put it in these places.
Allah forbid it goes to Jeddah.
Inshallah. You've got to put the America's Cup in places where, and the beautiful thing about in Auckland, you've been there, I've been there. The people are fantastic. They all understand it. They all get it. They all, it's a sailing nation. If you're going to put the America's Cup in Britain, you put it in Cowes. It's a sailing town, and it would be just utterly brilliant. As for the racing, I don't know where they're going to race it, but they probably have to go off down the back of the island to get some fair winds. But it would be brilliant. Again, Newport, light winds, but that was a fantastic host of the America's Cup. San Francisco, those IACC boats tacking up in front of the St. Francis Yacht Club, brilliant, with bleachers down the side. It was a magnificent place to have it. So there are great venues. Jeddah isn't one of those venues, and I think the America's Cup's got to go to places where the public like it, and where it's got to be in one of the major centres.
A few more comments here, and then we'll let you go. It's 22:40 there in England. What else, Julie?
There's lots of comments about what a great venue in Cowes was. That
well, your friend David James, our friend David James, but he went to bloody Stanford, and he said that was 2001 was the best regatta in the history of the planet, full stop.
Right.
And I think that's hard to argue with that. That was a terrific
You need to read all of those comments out, Julia.
Okay.
Solent has too much tide, Talbot Wilson is saying. Yeah, but you can get over that too. The Jubilee was quite simply something else. Rebecca Rogers is saying, yep. Everybody's agreeing with us on that.
Cowes will not host the Cup because of the politics of paying millions of taxpayer funds.
That's Ed Worley.
That's Ed Worley.
Well, that's the problem here in the States too, is that you're not going to get money out of governments here for especially post-COVID. Rick Hayes, 87 was an anomaly. Would like to experience that again, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
Yeah.
Tom, enough of all this. Magnus?
Tom, one thing I should say about Cork is when we were saying about the newspapers all having a go at each other. There was a softening of the line by the opposition party over the weekend, and that's quite key to whether Cork gets it or not.
Is that Sinn Féin?
Correct.
Yeah.
And they have softened their stance, and they have said they've sort of dropped the social issues bit. So if they come around to support it, it could happen.
Well, this has been illuminating, interesting, at least for me. I hope it has been for all. We have a lot of people on here watching, and thanks to you, Magnus. Again, any final comments about this postponement that is going on? How much longer do you think this postponement will be underway? Will continue?
It'll be days rather than weeks.
You think?
Yeah.
Days rather than weeks?
Yeah.
Okay, well,
they're going to get.
I know you're not a betting man, and I'm not either, but Julia is, and she would. She would.
Yes. Oh, millions.
We'd probably have a wager with him, wouldn't we, Julia, on that? A nice dinner at the restaurant of your choice next time we were together with Magnus?
Yes.
I think it's going to be longer. I don't think you're going to see this sorted out in days. I hope you're right, and I hope it's sorted out well, and I hope you're right, but Magnus.
I will only say, be sure to read the comments. There'll be a couple hundred of them so far, and there'll be more, because they're amusing and educational. It doesn't cost you a dime.
Okay, there's a Peter Harrison watching. I don't think the late great Peter Harrison, but he's another one. Magnus, I'm going to do. Are you able to stay? You got to run, probably.
Yeah. I can stay.
Can you? Because I'm going to do this day in history, which involves some America's Cup stuff too. Julia, shall we proceed here?
Please.
Magnus, thank you. We'll see how long this postponement lasts. The AP flag is still displayed, at least on my Photoshop picture, at the Royal New Zealand, beautiful Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron looking across the Devonport. I lived there. We love it. And if you've been watching for the last hour and 45 minutes, we've been mostly talking with Magnus Wheatley about the America's Cup and the venues and what's going on. But let's get in now to our next segment here in our C block. This day in history, the 21st of September, 1964. Now, Magnus, keep your counsel here, because I told you in the tech check what this was, and you were shocked, as was I, when I read this. Here, Julia I don't think Julia saw this when I breezed through the slides. Here's your one and only clue, Julia, a real clue. I got a caption with this. I'll give you a hint.
Mm-hmm.
You know who that is on the far left?
Mm-hmm.
That is Richard Enerson.
No kidding.
No kidding. That is the 1964 crew of the 12-meter Constellation, Connie, as some call her. You can see Bob Bevere back here, who was the skipper, and I can't ID all these other guys. Enerson could, no doubt. This is Dick Enerson over here, our longtime friend here at St. Francis Yacht Club. But an amazing, really, tale, and there's a punchline to this, because this is Constellation 64. On this day, do you know what happened? There's the yacht. And sadly, I don't have a good picture of Sovereign, which was the opponent. And if you go on YouTube, you'll see there's actually a Pathé video, a minute and 50 or 60 second minute and 50 second video, I guess, of Constellation versus Sovereign in the 64 Cup, which Constellation won 4-0. And the concluding race, the final race, and it was a shellacking, frankly. Last race was today, the 21st of September, 1964, Connie defeating Sovereign. But here is the amazing factoid. This is actually from Hamish Ross. In another September Cup winning day, Constellation dispatched Sovereign 4-0, taking only 6 days to do so, marking the last time a British yacht featured in an America's Cup match. That's the finals. Now only 3 years short of 60 years.
That's amazing.
Magnus, were you as shocked as I was when I
was shocked, and Sovereign was Royal Thames Yacht Club, I think.
Correct.
And the guy who steered it was Anderson, Paul Anderson, and he was in the 1968 Olympic team that won a bronze. And one of his crew members was a guy called Adrian Jardine, who I rate as one of the best sailors, you know, I've ever had the chance to sail against. And he is the uncle of Mark Jardine, who runs the Yachts and Yachting website.
I think the helm for Sovereign was was the late great Peter Scott, who was president.
Eric Ridder.
Not for Constellation, for Sovereign.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was Paul Anderson.
No, I'm not 100% sure, but in doing the research today, and I didn't have a lot of time to spend on this, but I think it was Peter Scott who was president of IYRU before Beppe Croce. He was a great sailor, and it was a good great leader, also of British yachting, and then of the international yacht racing. We'll have to Google that. Julia's hard at work Googling that already on her phone, but I think it was ultimately. I think it was Peter Scott was his name.
I'll tell you what I'll do, Tom. I'll get out the Bible.
Okay, you got Fisher's.
Oh yes.
Absorbing interest. Let's talk about late great. We must be getting old because we keep talking about late great people on here, and Robert the Fisher, who we had a really Bob Bevere steered Constellation. Thanks, Bill Wingrove. Constellation was an Olin Stevens design. Yes, it was. David James, thank you. Eric Ritter, Ed Worley is saying Eric Ritter was replaced by Bob Bevere. Ed Worley is saying thank you. And who was steering Sovereign? Was that not Peter Scott? Somebody will know. Somebody will look that up here as quicker than any of the rest of us can. But I was amazed to see this factoid. Thomas Pryor.
Eric Ritter was replaced by Bob Bevere.
And Bob was past president of NARU, and actually was Harry Anderson's predecessor as executive director of NARU, and then Harry Anderson, then followed by me.
Yeah.
So and Bob,
You're right. Bob's picture of Peter Scott there.
Yeah, Peter Scott, later Sir Peter Scott, who was, there he is with Bevere. Is that Ted Hood on the left? Who's that on the left?
That is Bob Bavier.
Bob Bevere is on the right. Hold that picture up again, if you would, please. That's Bob Bevere on the right, he was also the publisher, editor of Yachting Magazine, terrific guy. And then is that Peter Scott in the middle? Who's got the microphone? That's not Fisher.
Bob just says he's being the interviewer, basically.
Cool.
He's a journalist.
Look at how resourceful this group is.
Yes, and I just think, what happened to our copy of Fisher's book?
It's around. It must be up at your place, isn't it?
No.
It's not down here. Not down here at the Beach Street Yacht Club. Well, anyway, on this day in history, Constellation defeated Sovereign 4-0 after only 6 days of racing. And it's been 57 years, been almost 60 years since a British yacht was in the match, the finals of the America's Cup, 1960.
Yeah, don't rub it in.
Oh, but it's a big challenge. See, it's good
well,
for
that's why we're all cheering for Sir Ben and for Sir James Ratcliffe and Ineos. Now, here's one other factoid. This may have been, I'm not 100% sure, but this may have been the first, this is again the crew of Constellation, and they were all gifted Rolex Submariners, which was a big deal at the time. They were all thrilled. And by the way, this was not done after they won. This was done during the trials or late in the trials, maybe when they were now going to be the defender, as motivation, not as a reward. The watch today, I saw today on an auction house website, one of these fancy watch websites. Here's one of those watches engraved, 1964 America's Cup Constellation, with the initials of one of the crew members. And that watch in 2013 was sold at auction for $55,000.
Wow.
So that's pretty good. I wonder what it would have gone for or will go for if it's resold in auction today, Julia. You talked about my Rolex being worth that number. That was for an all gold one. Mine's just just not a very fancy one. So that's this day in history. And I've got one other, and then Magnus, you've got a couple. I think we're going to make this.
Well,
and go ahead.
Yeah, so when you get asked to come on this show, you always get the trick question of this day in history.
Yes.
So I started looking stuff up. So there's kind of Rocky Marciano's last fight. It was the day that Michael Spinks beat Larry Holmes to take the IBF heavyweight championship. It was the day that Virgil, who wrote the Aeneid, died. But then, and it was also the day that The Hobbit was published. J.R.R. Tolkien's Hobbit was published. But the best one of all,
J.R.R. Tolkien.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the best one is in 2004. Green Day released American Idiot.
I don't even know either.
I remember that album. Meg had it. I didn't have it.
I have no idea.
American Idiot.
The only factoid I found is that it was this day in 1957 was the first episode shown of Perry Mason.
I saw you sent that to me, but I didn't realize it was.
Yeah.
Now, Magnus, do you have any idea who Perry Mason was?
It was the detective, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Almost. He was, well, in a later series, he was a chief of police or retired chief. He was the first big lawyer television show, and everybody like Hamish Ross always, and of course he's not a Kiwi, but all of us who aspire to be lawyers wanted to be Perry Mason and win every court case. But here's apropos American Idiot, and thank you for that. Do you know what this is? Because on this day in history, in 2017, some students at Caltech, Julia, you know what that is?
A coral.
No. Do you know what that is, Magnus?
Only because you told me.
Oh, that is a jellyfish.
A white jellyfish?
Jellyfish do not have a brain. I didn't know that. They have a nervous system, and they're sort of a strange cross between animals and plants. Plants, and Julie Aarons, don't criticize me for saying plants instead of plants.
Yeah.
Discovery of the first brainless animal that sleeps. The jellyfish Cassiopeia, I don't know if it's pronounced both ways. Research published in Current Biology by Caltech students who did a big study, and this plant/animal goes through a sleep habit, even though it doesn't have a brain. And that was a big scientific breakthrough. But I thought it was more important that we have the jellyfish. Now, look at Magnus laughing. Instead of calling people a crouton, if we really don't like them,
we can find them.
If we really don't like them, instead of calling them a crouton, I'm going to have a jellyfish here on the table, and we're going to call them a jellyfish, because that's I think, even if you don't have a brain,
we can have a video.
It's like American Idiot. Well, maybe we'll name Magnus. Maybe we'll name the jellyfish American Idiot. Apropos.
Yeah, there's so many brainless idiots going around at the moment that you could choose any name up at the moment, and it's it's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, on this day in history. Now, well, you learned a whole lot more than we probably had hoped for. Now I ask, and we've probably beaten this, as Clark Chapin will say, we've beaten this to death, but on this, I'm going to ask everybody one more time, now that we have beaten this to death. We like to do our correct or croutonic segment, and I've just put this gentleman's picture back in. It is him from a few years ago, Greymouth Petroleum. By the way, Magnus, one of the comments was maybe that petroleum smell is Greymouth Petroleum. You're just overwhelmed by all this discussion and back and forth about Greymouth Petroleum. That clever comment came. I can't remember now who put it in there.
Very good.
Huh?
Yeah.
Wasn't that good?
Very good.
So Gordon Smith, we could give the jellyfish the nickname of Boris. Gordon Smith, of course, is a Brit living in Denmark. But I ask you, is this guy and his effort, you heard Julia and Magnus and I beat this to death, is this guy correct, Mr. Dunphy? Is he Humpty Dumpty? Is he serious? Is he not serious? Is he correct or croutonic? And we'll ask our FOSI to give one bottom line. Not his intentions. Let's assume his intentions are honorable. He's really trying to do the right thing, or maybe, well, we can't even say that. We're not even sure. Is he correct or croutonic?
He's definitely correct to do what he's doing. You've got to try. There's a great prize at stake here.
Yes, I agree.
That was Baton Rouge who said that. Yeah, Baton Rouge, who's in Charleston.
Rick Hayes did too.
I admire people that try, and I just hope that it's with the best intentions, and everything that he's saying is with the best intentions. So I think the next few days it'll come out, and I don't think we should hammer him yet, but
let's see. There's a lot of corrects. Rick Hayes in Chicago says correct. Gordon Smith says he is of the genera Croutonius. Stingray thinks his intentions are serious. Ed Worley says he is correct, and I think people will be surprised. Okay. There's 3 to 1 correct versus Croutonic here. We'll see what others have to say.
Stingray says,
I hope that guy, I hope we are surprised, and wouldn't it be, what a brilliant story it would be if he comes out and just puts down 4 aces and brilliant.
Well, I think it's a work in progress. That's why I'm not quite so concerned about where's, show us the money and put your everything on the table, the cards and everything else, zip down your zipper and put it on the table. Let's see it. I think, the guy said, we got to keep this in Auckland. I think I can raise the money. That's what I think he's doing. Now, maybe if these foreigners are just using him as a stalking horse, as a front man, that's not correct.
Knowing Kiwis, though, they're very nationalistic pride, and I think they would really much prefer it there, and they would wear their Red Sox if they had to.
Well, I think we're all saying the same thing. So is he correct or Croutonic? Jonathan Frank, he may be Croutonic, but it's correct to give it a shot, okay? Christopher Gillingham in Leamington, just around the corner from you, says it's correct. Ted Ryman says correct. Julie Aarons has not said, but anybody else want to weigh in? We'll read your comments in Postwell after the show. And as Julia likes to encourage you to do, everyone should go back and read the comments because there are a lot of good ones. And we do leave comments open in replay for those of you joining us.
And you can add to them.
Magnus, you once again magnificent. Anything to add to for the good of the order?
No, I think there's a lot more to play out in this story of the America's Cup, and but I do think we're closer to an announcement on the venue than you think.
Well. I hope you're right, and if you are, I'll gladly buy you a diener the next time we're together. Hopefully sooner than later, whether it's in the Cows or whether it's here in San Francisco or Jeddah, God forbid, or Cork or Auckland or someplace in Spain. Who knows? Magnus, thanks very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks,
Big hugs. Great. Have a nice evening. It's 11 o'clock there. You deserve a glass of something that you can smell.
I'm going to go drink some more petrol.
Okay, don't do that. Yeah. Magnus Wheatley, our guest today on the TFE Live. We'll wrap this up as we get into the D segment. And we've got a couple of short videos to recognize they're really by way of Bravo Zulus. But before we do that, we want to do John Emmett, who submitted a short but very nice video about what was going on at the Itchner Sailing Club. They're next door to Hailing Island in the UK. Have a look.
Hi, Tom and Julia and all the FOSI. Good morning, good afternoon or good evening, depending where you are. Today's location, I am at Itchner Sailing Club, which is part of Chichester Harbour. Very popular harbour. There's so many sailing clubs here, I would actually struggle to remember them all. I was actually racing at Botham at the weekend. I'm here doing a little bit of coaching at Itchner, which you can see in the background, with a very suitable junior and youth class. I'm going to come on to that more in a minute, but yeah, very active harbour, Chichester Harbour. Probably the most well-known sailing club here will be Hailing Island Sailing Club, produced a lot of champions and affectionately known as HISC. The class I'm looking at today is the topper, as you can see from the topper hat on the top of the sail, so I'll go back and be able to see that in a minute. Almost a perfect boat for introducing people to sailing, because it's not a GRP boat. The boats can clump together and you're not going to be putting gel coat on at the end of every evening. And that low cost and low boat maintenance is really very attractive for people getting into the sport, and it keeps all the costs down and just means you're spending your time on the water. And there's 2 rigs, so if I zoom out a little bit you'll be able to see. So this is a 4.2 rig and there's a 5.3 rig, and having said that, I think the class is now going to be introducing a larger rig, similar size to the Ilka 6, but it's the 4.2 and 5.3 which are the most common, and you are literally getting hundreds of boats at the Nationals. So I think this is a really nice class to be involved with, and this was actually my first boat, the topper. I remember it well. It had the name Emmanuel, with sail number 17548, so you never forget your first topper either. Not perhaps the brightest of days. Winter is gradually coming to the UK, which obviously means it's going to be coughs and cold seasons, but I'll leave that to the expert Andrew to talk about. But yeah, flu season will be on us at the tail end. The nights are definitely drawing in, hence my last report, but you can probably see in the background, I thought it was worth showing, that is Hayling Island Sailing Club, which is a really famous club in the UK, and they host a lot of major championships and produce a lot of good sailors. And that was today's report from Chichester Harbour.
Now, did you notice there was some classical music in the background of that? That was not my doing. That was John had that in the background of his video, I guess. So very classy.
Yeah.
Did you also notice he said, "You never forget your first topper"?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
I think that's become a catchphrase. You never forget your, what was the class of your first cadet?
Cadet. Yeah.
See, now cadets, that's a bit more of a double entendre, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thanks, John Emmett, for another great report. Now, for those of you who are, and you know, I don't know why the topper, I guess there's somebody was saying, Gordon Smith, that he sailed one in Majorca in days past, but I don't know that the topper really ever took off outside of the UK.
I've never heard of it.
Well, no, I've heard a lot about it. It's been around. But for those of you who are geographically challenged, Itchner Sailing Club, from where John was reporting, they're next door to Chichester. In fact, it's Chichester Harbor. I can't say it the way the Brits do. It's a terrific sailing club, and Hayling Island Sailing Club, HISC, fantastically well known, and the home port of a lot of top sailors. And you see, it's just east of Portsmouth and northeast of the IOW, the Isle of Wight. But it is, look at this beautiful club.
It
the
is.
Itchner Sailing Club. And like all clubs, this on their website, all clubs today, they're advertising what? As a great venue for what?
Junior sailing.
Weddings.
Weddings.
Like we do at St. Francis Yacht Club, like we do a lot of places. But look at from their website, these are they have a lot of these RS, various classes, the RS, this is the FIBA XL, I guess. And they've got the X Class 1 design. Look at those little tiny kites.
Mm-hmm.
You know, generally boat for bigger breeze. I have foiled a topper, not for long, good little training boat for utes, for you sailors, utes. Mm-hmm. I have one down under, Pedro foiling, Peter Stevenson is saying, down in Sydney. Yeah. Just nice pictures from their website. I commend it to you, commend the club to you. That's a club, Julia, of which I want to be a member. I'd love that they'd make us an honorary member. We'd hoist their burgee here at the Beach Street Yacht Club. We'd give them reciprocal rights here in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. But you want to be with people like look like they're having fun, enjoying their yacht racing, their sailing.
Right.
At the Titchener Sailing Club. Well done, John Emmett. Thank you for that. Shall we do our 7th inning stretch, Julia? You know, this has become a tradition.
All right.
And we got a couple more brief videos, so I'll do it. Always good to get up and get up. I hope all of you can do that as well. Have a stretch.
Oh, yes. It's good.
We watched the Kansas City, right? It's the Kansas City Symphony and Chorus under the direction of Michael Stern. Do other sports do this 3/4 of the way through the game the way we do? here in this country for baseball?
I don't know, but
in the seventh inning, we get up. And
cricket
have a nice
should.
stretch. Cricket. Well, it was an interesting conversation, and I want to put this to all of you. I've been talking with Andy Rose and Chris Bretschker, and we had this conversation with Matt Whitfield last night, that our sport is a lot like sailing, is a lot like baseball, in that it's slow. You know, okay, we're talking about traditional sailing, yacht racing. It's slow, and baseball and cricket, I guess both, especially what is it, a 5-day test match?
I know.
Go on forever. And of course, they've shortened them down now and yada yada in this day in television. But one of the great things in this country, in a long history of baseball, was radio. It was coverage by radio. And I won't bore you with all of the ticker tapes and how they used to replicate the sounds in a studio someplace hundreds of miles away from where the game was being played, as if the announcer were right there. Mm-hmm. Talking about Ronald Reagan.
I was going to say
that at WHO radio in Des Moines. Yeah. But I've made the point to several people, and I'd be interested with the FOSI. I don't want to debate it now, but why aren't we thinking more about radio for our sport? Cowes Isle of Wight has a Cowes radio station, and they could do a lot of yacht racing reports. WADK in Newport, Rhode Island used to go out to the Cup course before television, even during television, and would report in. Bob Fisher or somebody was out there, one of the former Cup guys, sailors, American sailors, skippers, and would report in. And I'm wondering if there isn't, especially for those who know sailing, if you don't have to see the pictures, you go about like you do watching this show, you're doing other things, you're maybe almost listening to it by way of a podcast more than looking at the visuals until you hear something that you're really interested in. You may come back and focus in, whether you're in the office or in home or somewhere in your car. God forbid you're driving and watching this, but a lot of people do. We know it. I'm wondering if we shouldn't be rethinking our coverage of certain events that we don't have the budget, we don't have the technical expertise to do television out on the water for, it's expensive, it's difficult. But it might be, it's virtually free to take a microphone, like what John Emmett does, go out with his phone, your phone, and of course he's recording it, but he could just as easily dial into the internet and live stream audio. Forget about taking pictures and bouncing around. Live stream audio. I get the symphony off here but it's baseball that has inspired me to think about this. Live stream audio and say, and set up the yacht racing radio network. And we have events that we don't have the budget for, but we're still interested in hearing about. And somebody has a microphone and is saying, well, here's what's going on today. And it's it's a fairly significant international event. And if somebody's good, they can describe. They're on leg one of a 4-leg up windward leeward. They're at the top mark. So-and-so's leading by 5 boat lengths. They're coming into the bottom gate. The leader is going around the downwind starboard end of the gate, and they're starting leg 3 upwind, going the upwind left. They look like they're leading by about 7 boat lengths. And then if you have the tracker, the track like New York Yacht Club used for the Invitational Cup, along with, even if you don't have it, but if you're at home on your computer listening to the audio and watching the tracker, for example, it costs virtually nothing to do that. And we could bring the results live, real time, by audio, by radio, to a whole lot of people.
What comes to mind is the parents of the sailors, which we've experienced a lot from
with Gov Cup.
With Gov Cup, and say, oh, that's what that's doing, and that's how that's, and they that would involve travel, but not everything has to do that, and it's a good way to sort of find out what's going on.
Well, let's see. There's some comments here because I still think this is something we ought to pursue, and if you all think it is, we probably will. Morris Stevenson, great report, John. Yes, his reports are delightful.
Yes.
And again, we invite anybody who wants to give us similar reports from your neck of the woods. We would welcome that. We'd appreciate that. But Gordon Smith, 5-day cricket tests are remarkably intense. Love them. Yes. Okay. David James says, anyone else listen to Bill Bryson description of baseball on radio? Now, Bill Bryson, I think there's a Bill Bryson book over there behind you, Julia, on that. You can swivel around. Is there a Bryson book there? In fact, well, we don't have to deal. We'll put it in the Friday show, but I think Hamish Ross, a big fan of Bill Bryson. And yes, David James, it is terrific how they used to replicate it. But Stingray, funny, during the show, I had to run up to a dental appointment, and I'm not sure if that music was more fun or or getting that dang tooth pulled. Okay, I hope you're okay. That's all good time. I think I've lost my zeal for the zeal for the AC. Julie Aarons, plant can be pronounced any way you like. Thanks, Julie. No reason why not, J. Frederick Bland is saying. Gordon Smith, I think this point about radio coverage is an excellent one. Cricket on the radio is really excellent. And baseball, too, in this country. You can do a lot of other stuff and still keep your ear on the San Francisco Giants playing the L.A. Dodgers or the San Diego Padres. You need good color commentary. Yes, the commentators have to be really good. And I wouldn't try to do hockey on the radio. It's hard unless you're Canadian and you really, are desperate to hear it when you're driving around. But it's the sport's fast and the puck's hard to follow even on television. Ted Ryman, I often listen to English Test cricket on my car radio. Jody Shields, I can see you doing this. Well, Gordon Smith is saying to Jody Shields, I can see you doing this. Ed Worley, radio coverage show would include the ability to listen on phones. Yes, you would stream it. We'd create some kind of this doesn't have to be a video show. We can turn the video off and it looks like this, and we can talk away with a black screen and it would be, it's the same thing, whether you've got video or not. So, Marcos Feinstein, well, Marcos, there's a good example. You get the 12-meter worlds, and they can't afford the TV or haven't so far been able to afford a TV except maybe in replay, yada, yada. So, and I'm no pedigreed sailor, but I'm a fan and I have fun reporting. Yes, and Marcos Weinstein is, and it's something a lot of people can do. Great seeing you guys over the weekend. Yes, Commodore Gladwell, thank you. Okay, well, let me, have a think about that. Maybe we'll talk some more about that. Yeah, but you could get a drone. But let me tell you, Alan Long, you definitely have a face for radio, Tom. Thank you. Thanks. I say that all the time. I have a face for radio. But the point is, once you involve a drone with a camera, now you got to switch video feeds. You got to fly the drone. You got to cycle the drone every 20, 25 minutes and put a new battery in.
Got to catch the drone.
You got to catch the drone. I mean, we have a team doing the Gov Cup with a team of 25 people to do that television show. Okay, enough. I listen to my car like radio broadcast, Tom Fishbeck is saying. Well, think about it, and we'll talk some more. Now, here are some events we've been talking about for the last week that did do video. Bravo Zulu to the events. Video wasn't perfect by any means, but it's at least they're trying and they're working on it. So have a look, and congratulations to the winners. The New York Yacht Club's Invitational Cup. Fantastic regatta won by Southern Yacht Club on Saturday.
A clearing sky, a dying northerly, and 19 teams looking to finish sailing's premier Corinthian championship on a high note. It was high-stakes sailing on Narragansett Bay for the fifth and final day of the Rolex New York Yacht Club Invitational Cup. Southern Yacht Club carried a 9-point lead into the day, but San Diego Yacht Club had the momentum of 4 straight race wins in a row, and Royal Thames Yacht Club from London, England was waiting in the wings in the event that either of the two leaders faltered. Adding to the drama was a shifty, puffy breeze. It wasn't a question of whether a top team would find itself in trouble, it was just a matter of when and how well they'd recover.
In a really good race for us, and we gained 2 places on the final ranking, and this was my second invitational here in Newport. I just love this place, and the IST 37 is fantastic.
Surprisingly, it was San Diego that blinked first, struggling mightily in race 1 and dropping out of contention. Royal Thames picked up the race win and a few more points on Southern Yacht Club.
It's awesome. I mean, couldn't ask for a better result, obviously. The guys on the boat, my team is exceptional. So, basically, it was a little difficult for me because I'm normally the tactician. Now I'm driving, and I had to be told that I'm the driver and just drive the boat fast. So I was driving the boat as fast as I possibly could and not looking around. So I got to give big credit to Marcus and Rick and our whole entire crew. Andrew, Christian Gamble, Andrew Egan.
In the regatta's final race, Royal Thames recovered from an awful start and charged to the head of the fleet, eventually finishing third. But Southern was steadfast in pursuit and finished just 3 points behind, more than enough to secure Corinthian Sailing's premier trophy for a second time. Only one other club, the Royal Canadian Yacht Club, has accomplished that feat. The 2021 Rolex New York Yacht Club Invitational Cup.
Okay, a classy event. Thanks, Tucker Thompson, for the voiceover. Thanks to Rolex and all the other sponsors. Corinthian event, terrific event. Well done by New York. Television, not perfect, but they're doing it. And Andy Green and Tucker did the commentary in New York, and the Icarus Sports, there they are, did the live streaming from Harbor Court. So that's nice. And then we had the little less auspicious Congressional Cup. The racing was terrific, and our good friend Jeffrey Peterson finished fifth. And they took the top four, and they go into the semifinals. And then the other remaining, fifth through 10th, I guess it was this year, have a fleet race, and the winner of the fleet race or fleet races, then they stack them, and Jeffrey ended up fifth. So our FOSI and regular contributor to the show, Jeffrey Peterson, bravo to him, but Taylor Canfield, once again, came out on top. Have a look at this video.
Yeah. It was finals day at the 56th Congressional Cup at Long Beach Yacht Club, and spectators were out early to enjoy the close-up action and the beautiful Los Angeles weather. The semifinals were finally poised after yesterday's battles, with Sweden's Yanni Bernsten and USA's Chris Poole tied at 2 wins each, while the world number one from Switzerland, Eric Monnen, and his team were trailing 4-time Congressional Cup winner Taylor Canfield. With both of these matches sailed together in the light wind conditions, it was Bernsten and team who took the lead after inflicting a pre-start penalty on his opponent and sailed away to advance to the final with a 3-2 winning margin. While Taylor Canfield drew on his experience to beat Eric Monnen, sealing a 3-1 victory to move into his 5th final here. With two hugely skilled match racing teams facing off in the final, both of whom are former Congressional Cup champions, it was expected to be a fiery encounter. Straight to the battle, and with 3 wins needed in this final, it was Canfield and his team who scored the first point after outmaneuvering the Swedish team, cruising home with a clear lead. In Match 2, an incident in the pre-start dial-up saw the Swedish team penalized by the umpires, and that was game over, as Bernsten and his team were always playing catch-up, as Canfield left them behind, to give him a 2-point lead in the final. Bernsten now needed to win the next match to stay alive. With the pressure on, Canfield took control of the pre-start, leading away across the line, taking the right, and once again it was the Americans who were quicker up the course, again sailing away. They couldn't afford any mistake in this light breeze, though, as Bernsten used all his skills to gradually start to close the gap through the race. But it wasn't to be, and the years of match racing that Canfield and his team have accumulated meant they stayed safe and clear, cruising home to secure a 3-0 victory and take the title once again. And so, Taylor Canfield and his team Stars and Stripes become the first to win this magnificent trophy, which is soaked with the greatest names in sailing history, for the 5th time.
Yeah, I think that we stick to our plan, and the goal is to always get better throughout the week. So the guys kept working hard, and we had some really hard moments and some tough debriefs about how we can get better. And, I think that makes us stronger in the end. So we just keep pushing and keep working on our boat speed. And, I think that showed this week that we were definitely the fastest boat out there. And I think as long as we were, decent getting off the line, we're in pretty happy shape.
And with it comes a coveted Crimson Blazer, awarded to the winning skipper, rounding off yet another sensational Congressional Cup regatta.
And $20,000. I mean, that's
that's nice.
That's
Excuse
not
me.
chump change.
Ed Worley says, "Wow, sailors on the water, sailing boats that people and other sailors can relate to and understand."
Indeed. So bravo Zulu to Taylor Canfield, Mike Buckley. They've been on the show. And, of course, Taylor's dad is a FOSI and has also been on the show a couple times.
Yes.
He's a New York Yacht Club stalwart and does a lot of race committee work and is president of the Virgin Islands Sailing Association. Visa. Bill Canfield. We love Bill. He's just a terrific guy, as is Taylor. Bravo Zulu. Congrats to all at the clubs on either side of the coast. Not quite wrapping up Super September. We had action from Europe from the Rolex Maxi Cup. We played that video last Friday, and we'll see what else is going on for the rest of this month. The Big Boat Series wrapped here, but that's really, we get criticized for not covering local stuff. But this is an international yacht racing show. The Big Boat Series is basically a Bay Area regatta, 79 boats, 80 boats, give or take, nice regatta.
It started out international.
And we talked about it at the top of the show.
Yeah.
So that's how we're going to cover Big
It used to be when the Maxis had a worldwide circuit, and this just became one of their stops on the worldwide circuit.
Exactly. Okay, that brings us to our Whiskey Tango Foxtrot segment, and I have only one. Julia?
Yes.
You're not going to get your finger ready to shake. This came from, it's not bad. This came from guess who? Victoria's Secret model, huh? So what is Victoria's little secret? I used to be Victor. Victoria. That, of course, courtesy of, we think, thanks to Ted Ryman. Yeah. I thought that was clever. That was okay, wasn't it?
It's not so funny.
This time, this is the hot topic, one of the hot topics these days.
Yes.
And then the finish line, our last little segment here. Tomorrow is the first day of autumn. We call it fall, but most of the rest of the world calls it autumn. Unless you're down under, it's the first day of your spring. Tomorrow's the September equinox at 12:20 PDT. You know why that changes from year to year? Why it's not always the 22nd or the 21st? A little bit of earth wobble, but not much. It's leap years that affect it more than anything. Because that extra day in there. So an equinox, as you all know, is the instant in time when the plane of the Earth's equator passes through the geometric center of the sun, yada, yada. It occurs twice a year, yada, yada. Sun directly above the equator. In the northern hemisphere, the March equinox is called vernal. Again, you all know the southern hemisphere, it's the reverse is true. And then, of course, you have the solstices in, when are they? December and, tell me when? June? Winter solstice and summer solstice. But here is the factoid I thought you'd be interested in. Hemisphere neutral names, I'd never heard these, are the northward equinox for the March equinox, indicating that at that moment, the solar declination is crossing the celestial equator in a northward direction, comma, and southward equinox for what we're going through now, for the September equinox, of course, meaning equal night in Latin, shortening of those words, indicating that at that moment the solar declination is crossing the celestial equator in a southward direction. Now, Julia, I ask you.
I never heard that.
Had you ever heard that?
No, but it's lovely to know.
Have any of our other FOSI ever heard that? I had never heard that.
Yeah.
And we'll use that because we like to be hemisphere neutral ourselves because of our FOSI are all over.
Yeah, but nobody will know what we're talking about.
Well, they will now. Northward equinox and the southward equinox, and tomorrow is the southward equinox, the September equinox. And there is a nice little...
Yes.
How's that? I've never seen that either. I was looking all over for one that didn't say autumnal equinox, because that's what most of the northern hemisphere images would say. No, an equinox is the name of my... Yes, that's the other problem, Clark Chabin, is that if you Google equinox, you know what it comes up with? The Chevy Equinox, which is a model, and you get all this stuff about how great or how bad that car is. I don't know, but Clark, who used to work for Generous Motors, would tell you, maybe still does. He has a license plate that says VRNL Vernal for the start of our summer. Vernal equinox. Spring, start of our spring. Vernal equinox. Okay, well, regardless, so wherever you are, happy southward equinox.
Okay.
Huh, Julia?
All right. I'm glad to know that.
I am too. I had no idea. Southward equinox. Okay, that's about it for us. Thank you for joining us. Thanks also to Magnus, the marvelous, magnificent Magnus Wheatley, who was on for almost, better part of 2 hours today with us. And no doubt will be on again. I think he's wrong that it's going to be a matter of days rather than weeks before that venue to be sorted. But
well, we'll find out.
We'll soon know, won't we?
Yeah.
Julia, would you like to say your thing here?
Yes. Please. Right now. Like, follow and share, or subscribe. Subscribe doesn't cost you anything, but you make sure you get notified every time we come on.
Yeah, you will get those notifications. And you also can comment, even if you're watching a replay, that we leave the comments open. Support us on patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated to keep us alive here. We appreciate it. $4 or $5 a month, whatever you can do for us. We appreciate it very much. And we hope to see you on Friday. Julia, anything else?
No. I just repeat how much fun it is to play with our FOSI all the time.
We are really lucky, aren't we?
Yeah.
To have this great group of you, and we do this for you. We don't. I mean, some of you will think we do it for our own egos, but it's a lot of work to put these shows together, as you heard Magnus say. I don't know how he is, frankly, how he's so prolific with blog posts once a day, almost 7 days a week. Not quite.
Not once a day.
Yeah, he is. He's pretty much once a day, 5, 6, 7 days a week, sometimes twice a day too.
Sometimes twice a day. Yeah.
He's magnificent, as are you, Julia. Thank you very much. And we hope the rest of your week goes swimmingly. Have a great rest of your week. In the meantime, if you can, sail fast, sail safe, and have fun. Ciao. For now.